Caspian Policy Center. Your Excellencies, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Minister, and the ambassadors. The Caspian Policy Center is proud to host the first Caspian Connectivity Conference to bring together the best minds in government, business, and nonprofits to discuss connectivity, energy, and economy in the Caspian region, as well as the United Kingdom's involvement and opportunities in these areas in the Caspian region. This is our actually first public event in London. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. And we are a Washington-based policy research think tank on the Greater Caspian region. And it's very big honor for all of us to be here. I want to take a moment to thank embassies and our friends in the UK and the US governments for their support for this event. Specifically, I want to thank Ambassador David Moran, who is here with us, UK Regional Energy Security and Climate Ambassador for Europe and Central Asia from the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and Joshua Walls, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Europe, Eurasia, Africa, and the Middle East from the US Department of Energy, for being here with us. A lot of important developments happening, and in light of the prevailing security challenges confronting the region and economic challenges that the region is facing, the significance of cooperation and mutual support between the Caspian region countries and their global partners cannot be overstated. This importance is underscored by various factors, such as escalating situation in Afghanistan and economic uncertainties stemming from Russia's invasion and unprovoked war against Ukraine. In this context, fostering collaboration and solidarity among Caspian region countries and their international allies becomes increasingly crucial to address these complex issues and promote regional stability. The partnership between the United Kingdom and the countries of the Caspian region has grown to include cooperation across multiple sectors of engagement. And Ambassador Moran will obviously speak to that. I don't want to go into too much of details of it. In 2022, last year alone, the collective GDP of Caspian region was over $500 billion, going over $500 billion, basically, just the 8 countries of the South Caucasus and Central Asia. If you include Turkey into this, it's over $1 trillion GDP. This was about 18% increase last year. It's very significant development. In 2022, UK was among the top sources of foreign direct investment for countries in the region such as Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Kazakhstan. The primary sectors driving trade between the United Kingdom and Caspian region encompass a range of industries, including oil, gas, agriculture, minerals, and mining. The Caspian region continues to play a significant role in meeting the world's immediate energy needs and diversification of supply. Outside governments and companies should be looking beyond immediate needs and act on the region's potential to help meet future global energy demands. As pressing as today's energy needs are, future needs will be much greater. I'd like to stop here and thank you for all being here. And Caspian Policy Center once again is very honored to have you all. And I hope we'll continue our engagement in this platform in coming next year. This is our first connectivity conference. And this connectivity corridors and cooperation will play a huge role in making the region together and also increasing its connections with the West through the Middle Corridor. Here I'd like to invite our advisory board member, Professor Roger Kangas, to introduce our keynote speakers. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Efkan, and thank you all for coming in this morning, and I should say participating in what should be a very interesting next several hours discussing connectivity in the Caspian region. Just, from a personal note, I should say, 47 years ago was my first trip to the Caspian, yes, during the Soviet period, and I was fascinated by the area as part, at least it seemed to be part of a single entity. Of course, now for over 30 years, these are separate countries going in different directions, forging different alliances, different connections, and finding different opportunities. And I keep stressing different because often when we look at connectivity in the region, we wring our hands and say the region needs to connect more, there aren't opportunities, countries are isolated, there's less trade. That's a yes and no question, because I think those in the room here know that there have been opportunities for cooperation, and we are seeing new opportunities move ahead. This conference is timely because we're looking at several what I would call important historic inflection points, the Russian invasion of Ukraine being one, the search for alternative energy perhaps being a second, as well as the security dynamics in the Middle East, the greater Middle East region, if we will, and the Eastern Mediterranean offer up a third. And so with this in mind, I'm excited to have, at least at the beginning here, a series of welcome remarks, or opening remarks, I should say, that will set the stage for two panel discussions to take place sequentially on regional cooperation and connectivity. Our comments are designed to be, if you will, pithy, direct, insightful statements from key officials who work on the region, not just think about it and talk about it, but work on the question of connectivity. And so with each, I will simply introduce, have the individual come up, make their remarks. The second, the third, and others will come in. And so, gentlemen, ladies, expect to see a range of opinions, a range of views, and approaches towards connectivity coming from the next hour's discussions. We'll offer then a time for a coffee break after these initial remarks, and then we'll get into the two more discussion-focused roundtable presentations. And so with this, I will begin our introductions and introductory comments and start with Ambassador David Moran. As already introduced, he's the UK Regional Energy and Security Climate Ambassador for Europe and Central Asia here at the FCDO. Ambassador Moran, the microphone is yours.
Well, Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to the Caspian Policy Center for hosting this conference. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss on behalf of the UK government issues that are high on our energy, climate, commercial, and geopolitical agendas. And on a collective government and personal view, it's really good to see representation from throughout the region, Central Asia, South Caucasus, and Turkey, of course, who've been really important partners with the UK throughout the COP26 presidency. Now, these countries, many of them, I've visited some of them more than once during my COP26 climate role, and in at least 3 of them, I have lived and worked there, being honored as to be Manish's ambassador. The events of the last 18 months have solidified the central role that energy resilience plays in our national and shared security as we work to diversify and reduce Russia's ability to use energy as a coercive tool. The UK strongly supports the development of the Middle Corridor, diversifying energy supplies to the European market and increasing commercial access to the Caspian region. We're actively working to bolster energy infrastructure and boost capacity in the region. And our partnerships have never been so important as we develop regional connectivity, cooperation, and collaboration. And of course, we're proud of the transformative role that British companies are playing in this transition. Now, investment in connectivity is hardly a new idea, but it's long been building momentum and recently gathering apace. Glasgow saw the launch of the Green Grids Initiative, which was itself the project of discussions between leaders across continents and is now part of the international connectivity initiatives that can be drawn together through a number of umbrellas. One of them I just wanted up front. It's kind of a personal thing, but it's also important to His Majesty's government as well. And that is the breakthrough agenda, in which it's a framework for technology and financial transfer to countries who are working hard to transit their energy into a greener mix. And so for hydrogen, steel, road transport, sustainable agriculture, and the one most relevant for here, power, which includes an element of connectivity within it. As you start to prepare for COP28, I recommend that the governments represented here have a look at the breakthrough agendas which are on the internet and see if it can be a helpful tool for building the capacity for driving your transition and our transition together, because it's not something confined to borders. I talked about momentum internationally. At the Southern Gas Corridor Conference in Baku, I and other keynote speakers stressed the vital role that the corridor plays in Europe's energy security. In March, the World Bank's Central Asia Energy Investment Forum in London brought high-level delegations together to discuss a possible World Bank regional electricity interconnectivity and trade project, and maximizing the benefits of connectivity was a recurrent theme at the Astana International Forum I took part in 10 days ago. The UK is the largest contributor to the 11 billion multilateral climate investment funds, which is working with regions like the Caspian to build low-carbon and resilient energy systems. The Climate Investment Fund's largest investment in Central Asia totals almost $200 million, and over a quarter of that, $50 million plus, of this comes from the UK. This investment will enhance the climate resilience of energy sectors in the region and attract private sector investment in renewable energy. I'd also like to point to the more than £30 million that we're providing to the CASA 1000 project. This will build the energy infrastructure needed to transfer surplus electricity from Central Asia to South Africa, benefiting regional power grids and individual consumers alike. The European Bank's new report on regional connectivity will provide a blueprint to attracting investment into the region and improving infrastructure. And to get the best results, of course, international funding, capacity building, and expertise must be coordinated. We, the UK, are investing in our strategic country dialogues and other communications, such as the recent visit to London from the chair and deputy chair of Caspian to understand directly from senior regional interlocutors how the UK can best play a greater role in boosting connectivity. We want to have a proper and constant dialogue and engagement with the governments represented today. Our respective governments can play a big role in attracting business to invest in the Middle Corridor. The UK will continue to support the regional transition to clean energy, grasping the enormous opportunities opening up in this field, especially as only a fraction of the potential has been realized so far. Now's the time. This will be critical as regional electricity demand accelerates and countries need to adapt to increasingly serious climate impacts. And I'd like to take this opportunity, if I may, to express my government's condolences to Kazakhstan following the awful wildfires in the northeast of your country. The UK stands ready to share the benefits of our experience close at home, whether it's our experience in interconnection with our neighbours, our agreements with or between UK and Scottish governments, regulators and energy companies, on moving from fossil fuels to renewables, using the skills and capabilities of energy workers, preserving and building green jobs and local content. We're proud to be the country with the second largest installed capacity for offshore wind in the world and the largest pipelines and projects in Europe. Our government and industry will continue to support you in an energy partnership that works for everyone. And on that, I wish you a very fruitful day and great discussions. Thank you again.
Okay. Now next to the podium, from the U.S. perspective and our Department of Energy, Joshua Volz, who has the position of Deputy Assistant Secretary for Europe, Eurasia, Africa, and the Middle East in that department. Mr. Volz, to you.
First and foremost, good morning, and thank you to all of my distinguished colleagues, Your Excellency, ambassadors. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I have long been a student and observer of the Caspian region and have really looked forward to the opportunity to engage more fulsomely in this discussion today. As a result of not just the recent events of the last 18 months, but really events that have been taking shape long before Russia's most recent invasion of Ukraine. You know, we find ourselves at a point in history that is a bit of a Gordian knot when it comes to international relations and the energy landscape specifically. And there's a trilemma that we are facing, not individually, but collectively when it comes to the energy landscape. And it's three important pillars, none of which can be disaggregated from each other. One is the ability for our countries and our communities to afford energy. The second is our ability to diversify those energy resources and provide energy security. And the third is the global challenge that we face in terms of climate change and reaching our net zero aspirations. And I would posit that there's, with those three pillars of the energy trilemma that we face as a collective, there are three elements of the solution that we must all bring together to address those challenges. And I'll talk about them individually in a moment, but the three elements of that key to unlocking that kind of trilemma, that energy, that Gordian knot, are development, diversification, and decarbonization. And the role that the Caspian region plays, not just regionally, but globally, in achieving those three things, the development, the diversification, and the decarbonization, is absolutely essential. We've seen record amounts of gas exported from the Trans-Adriatic pipeline this year, which has proved incredibly important as the world tries to transition away from unstable energy resources and resources that have been used as a weapon and a coercive element of foreign policy. We've seen a tremendous amount of opportunity that has been underscored by commercial interest in further development in the Caspian region, which I believe has only started to scratch the surface on what is possible. And we've seen the significant role that diplomacy out of the Caspian region has played in helping to play a counterbalance and a counterweight against a very unstable and uncertain energy landscape as we look to try to make sure that we have the resources necessary as we move into yet another winter heating season. If I may back up for just a moment, we spent a lot of time talking about how we are going to replace Russian molecules coming into the European continent. And the 10 BCMA that comes from the Southern Gas Corridor out of Azerbaijan is an incredibly influential and incredibly important element in our ability to diversify those energy resources. But that's a resource that's very finite in nature, like all of our hydrocarbon resources. So what are we going to do to ensure that the resources coming out of the Caspian continue to play the role that they are at now, but not just that role, but increase, which is what the aspiration that I know that the region has for itself, but also Europe has for its ability to come to that element of diversification to provide increased energy security. And one of the things that we see as a tremendous opportunity in that regard is the element of diversification, not just of sources, but of types of energy as well. The offshore wind potential in the Caspian region is tremendous. If we are able to start unlocking some of the renewable energy resources in the region, every molecule that is not consumed domestically is a molecule that can be exported and contribute to global energy security and diversification. So that element of addition by subtraction and what can we do on both sides of the energy equation is something that I think is incredibly important, and where the opportunities and the potential of the Caspian region are just barely beginning to be explored. So from a Department of Energy and a U.S. perspective, we see tremendous opportunity there and really look forward to partnering with our friends and allies in the region to deploy those technologies. In that regard, at the Department of Energy, we've launched what's called a series of Earth Shots. And these Earth Shots are technologies and specific areas of focus that the Biden administration and Secretary Granholm have identified as areas of focus that need specific focus and specific investment to help transition the world's economies and the world's energy systems to a greener, cleaner, and more efficient system. A number of these Earth Shots would be incredible opportunities for partnership between the United States and the Caspian region. For example, it's our goal within the next 10 years to bring down the cost of offshore wind to $45 per kilowatt hour. We are shooting for hydrogen to be $1 per 1 kilogram of hydrogen within the next 10 years as well. And those transformative technologies and those transformative elements of the energy mix are things that we hope to be able to then also share with our international partners and bring down the cost of technology and bring down the cost of that energy transition and that energy diversification and decarbonization that I talked about earlier. So those Earth Shots are just a few of the opportunities and the tools that the United States government and the Department of Energy specifically is trying to deploy to help to meet that kind of energy trilemma that we all face together. And I think, something that the ambassador spoke of previously, I think really is something that deserves a little bit of underscoring, and that is the element that this is not something that is a bilateral element and a bilateral challenge exclusively. This is something that must be done in partnership, and it's a complex problem that cannot be met with simple solutions. And I think part of what we see in complicated times is a desire to oversimplify and to rush towards the single element or the silver bullet answer, which it just simply does not exist. And so if we don't begin to roll up our sleeves and just take one step at a time, that journey of 1,000 miles will never begin. So this is something that we are really looking for every opportunity, no matter how great or how small, to partner with our Caspian friends and allies to bring those energy resources to the global market, to decarbonize and to create the opportunities for additional investment and connectivity within the region. So it's been made very clear, both in your presence in Washington and your presence in international fora here, that the Caspian is both incredibly important and open for business. And we are really looking to help our friends in the region be able to capitalize on those opportunities moving forward. Thank you.
And now that we've heard perspectives from both the UK and the US, we should turn to the Caspian region. And we're honored to have join us and to offer his remarks, His Excellency Ceyhun Bayramov, who's the Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan. Sir?
Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to extend my gratitude to the Caspian Policy Center for hosting Caspian Connectivity Conference. This conference is a welcoming dialogue platform to engage with the strategic Caspian region and to learn more about business and investment opportunities. Caspian region's exceptional geographical location at the center of the Eurasia makes this region indispensable for the continent's development. Today, the transportation routes from Central Asia through the Caspian Sea and further through the Caucasus are becoming particularly relevant. The theme of connectivity is extremely important for Azerbaijan as a landlocked country. Against the backdrop of regional geopolitical situation, transportation routes from Central Asia through the Caspian Sea and further through the Caucasus are becoming particularly relevant. Corridors and routes passing through Azerbaijan offer competitive advantages for the transport operators and businesses. Azerbaijan has heavily invested in diversification and modernization of its transport infrastructure and promoted a number of transport infrastructure projects to reinforce trade and logistics between Europe and Asia. In this sense, Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, so-called Middle Corridor, is emerging as a viable and safe alternative for traditional routes connecting Turkey to Central Asia and China with the Caucasus and the Caspian Sea. Azerbaijan is also an active initiator and trusted partner in implementation of a number of other regional connectivity projects, such as the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars Railway and Trans-Caucasus Fiber Optic Cable Project. With full operations, BTK has a potential to be stretched to Bulgaria, Romania, and further to the west. Today, we are working with our partners from Romania, Georgia, and Turkmenistan for establishment and operationalization of the international transport route Black Sea, Caspian Sea, and are ready to embark on negotiations within the relevant working group. In general, transit flows via Azerbaijan increased by 75% in 2022. Opening of all communications will contribute further to sustainable peace and stability in our region and significantly boost trade and transportation. A forefront initiative in this sense is the Zangezur Corridor. It holds potential for enhancing better connectivity within the Middle Corridor, and after its commencement, the volume of transit may increase by 5.8 million tons a year. Azerbaijan has been consistent in its transport and transit development throughout the year and applied efforts for enhancing regional collaboration for transport development with a number of countries. Two new trilateral formats in close cooperation with the Republic of Turkey, the Republic of Kazakhstan, and the Republic of Uzbekistan was established in 2022. In June 2022, the first meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and the Ministers in charge of transport within Azerbaijan-Kazakhstan-Turkey format was convened in Baku as an outcome of the Baku Declaration on increasing the transit capacities of the Trans-Caspian East-West Middle Corridor was adopted. The second meeting of ministers in this format was held in November last year in Aktau, where transport ministers signed the roadmap for the development of the Middle Corridor for 2022-2027. Within new Azerbaijan-Turkey-Uzbekistan trilateral format, the first meeting of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs, ministers in charge of transport and economy was held in August 2022. In Tashkent, Uzbekistan ministers adopted the Tashkent Declaration and reiterated their support for the development of the Middle Corridor. New trilateral cooperation formats feed into the existing efforts to increase regional cooperation vis-à-vis growing challenges to global security, stability, and economic development. These efforts are addressing our country's shared interest in peace, security, and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, sustainable transition stands high on Azerbaijan's development agenda, despite the fact that the traditional energy sector plays a vital role in our economy. Energy transition implies special linkages between conventional and renewable sources of energy, and for Azerbaijan, this linkage is a symbiosis. Azerbaijan pursues transformational changes in remodeling its economy to make transition to green and circular economy. Soaring energy crisis in different parts of the globe, with energy prices spiking to historical heights, is an obvious guidance that abandoning traditional fuels and drastic cuts in investments in traditional energy sector is not a way to reach energy transition goals. Even in light of accelerated energy transition, one cannot simply abandon the fossil fuels and or investment in these traditional sectors at once. The process needs to be balanced with due consideration given to different national circumstances, economic linkages, and respective capabilities. Today, the Southern Gas Corridor contributes to the security of supply and market competition, two unchanged pillars of the European energy policy. Natural gas from the Caspian Sea will also contribute to the accelerated phase out of coal and will ensure climate-resilient pathway from the cleaner few in regions that previously have not had access to gas. Increased supply from Azerbaijan will also play a significant role for securing of supply and delivering much-needed gas for vulnerable regions. The potential for the transit of gas originated beyond Azerbaijan could also be a complementary option. In 2022, Azerbaijan delivered 11.4 billion cubic meters of gas to Europe through the Southern Gas Corridor, an increase of 40% in comparison to 8.2 BCM in 2021. This year, Azerbaijan's total natural gas export will stand at 24.5 BCM, and almost half of this volume will go to the European market. We have also recently signed gas supply agreements with Romania and Hungary when we talk about European markets on top of Italy, Greece, and Bulgaria. And traditionally, as you know, the traditional gas markets for Azerbaijan, this is also the Republic of Turkey and Georgia. Given electricity interconnections between the EU and Azerbaijan is an important part of our energy dialogue with the EU. The launch of Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania, Hungary Black Sea submarine cable project will redefine regional energy map and accelerate energy transition in the participating states. Today, we have a strong interest from other partners, including Bulgaria and Serbia, to join the project. Azerbaijan Digital Hub is another important project enhancing regional connectivity. The project envisages the creation of the Digital Silkway, a giant digital corridor aimed to create and establish a new connectivity route between Asia and Europe by building submarine and terrestrial fiber optic cable networks in the Eastern Europe, Caucasus, Central and South Asia. In this context, we commend the launch of a joint venture, Caspian Fiber Optic Company, between relevant operators of Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, marking inception of a construction works. Ladies and gentlemen, investors are always willing to invest in stable, resilient, and sustainable regions. The end of the 44-day war in 2020 has opened perspectives for normalization process with Armenia on the basis of mutual respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and inviolability of borders of each other. On the other hand, it has paved the way for post-conflict reconstruction and rehabilitation of the conflict-affected territories of Azerbaijan and reintegration of ethnic Armenian residents of the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan into its political, economic, and social system. Azerbaijan is not and cannot be interested in detention. In Azerbaijan, we believe that our region has seen enough confrontation, destruction, and suffering. We expect Armenia to realize this opportunity opened now for her, drop off revanchist and provocative actions, and undertake all necessary steps in compliance with the principles mentioned above and commitments taken at the highest level, and thus prove its worth by deeds. The government of Azerbaijan has launched a large-scale rehabilitation and reconstruction works in the liberated territories. The master plans of rebuilding of the liberated cities and towns are underway. Huge transport and energy infrastructure projects, most notably the construction of several highways and power grids, are being implemented. 2 airports have already been built and are now fully functional, while the construction of the 3rd one continues. Green Energy Zone master plan, launched in the liberated territories of Azerbaijan, will allow us to move steadily to the cleaner energy mix, such as hydro, solar, and wind power. During COP26 in Glasgow, Azerbaijan has declared its enhanced climate ambition to establish net zero emission zone in the liberated territories by 2050. In partnership with the private sector, such as the BP, which has been our partner in development of fossil fuel projects, we already kicked off green growth initiatives in the liberated territories. The large-scale innovative initiatives and incentives launched in the liberated areas of Azerbaijan as the Green Energy Zone, smart city, smart village concepts, the target to transform these territories into a net zero emission zone by 2050, and other related activities will altogether transform the liberated territories into one of the leading, developed, by meantime, the cleanest regions of Azerbaijan. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate that Azerbaijan is committed to continue moving along the path of development and contributes to building a more and secure and prosperous future of the region. We are interested in cooperating with investors from the region and beyond. We believe that through joint action, we will contribute to the realization of sustainable and resilient growth in the region. We invite the partners, all partners, to support Azerbaijan's post-conflict reconstruction and rehabilitation efforts. I take this opportunity to thank again organizers of the event and wish success to the conference. Thank you.
You're okay to answer.
Yeah.
Okay. His Excellency, the Foreign Minister, agreed to answer a question or two from us. So if somebody has a question, I would welcome it from the back, and introduce yourself when you ask.
Hello, thanks very much, Minister. My name is Rosemary Griffin. I'm a journalist working for S&P Global Commodity Insights. I just wondered if you could give some more guidance on how Azerbaijan sees energy prices developing this year. Do you expect a lot of volatility, both from the oil and gas perspective? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So this is, when we talk about energy prices, this is really, as it says, $1 million question. So I know that, and I see in the conference, the specialists in the area, probably they are, let's say, better, they have deeper knowledge about the trends in the industry. What I can tell you is that when we talk about the energy prices, so sometimes it is viewed then for energy producers, the high prices are always positive. This is good, and I can tell you that this is not the case. So I think because we understand that when we talk about the, let's say, high prices, and we witnessed this right after the start of the war in Ukraine, for instance, we witnessed this trend. This is not good also for producers, because for producers, the long-term planning is more important than to have short-term, spike, and then inevitably it will, definitely very badly affect the economy, and then you will have a recession. So its ups and downs are always, let's say, negative. From this perspective, of course, it is difficult to predict the prices for the future, but I think that Azerbaijan, working with other producers very closely, so our policy is always to let's say, to predict the prices on a, let's say, on the level that from one side it is good, in order to attract enough investment to the industry, and at the same time, it is not too high for the consumers, so it doesn't negatively impact, the economies, in the region and on a global scale.
A second question, please. One more.
Thank you, Excellency. My name is Arif Babayev. I'm a proud British Azerbaijani and British Kazakh because I was born and raised in Kazakhstan. So the region is very known to me. It's very symbolic where in this building. I'm not sure many of you know, this building was, I think, one of the forefathers of this insurance hall was Sir Frederick Rutter. And Sir Frederick Rutter is one of his first sort of assignments when he joined London and Lancashire Insurance, was head of foreign office. And guess which region his first deal on insurance was? In the Caspian region. That was the good old days of the Nobel family and someone else. And this shows that 125 years ago, insurance played an incredibly important part for the European markets and for the European economy. So we see that 125 years into today, Azerbaijan is playing more and more important role for Caspian region as a whole, playing more important role for the European economic and energy in particular, diversity and safety. The question is, how do you see the region evolving more into the green and sustainable energy? And how will it affect the economies of the region and the future investments into particular sectors? Because this is not an investment which you get returns in 1 or 2 years. This is a long term. And what's the country's strategy in Azerbaijan in particular, and how do you see the region developing? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. you are absolutely right. So you talk about, you mentioned about 125 years of, let's say, history and importance of Caspian region in, let's say, energy, also security of our region and wider. If we look at the, let's say, 30 plus years, so the period when we talk about after the regaining of independence of Azerbaijan, starting from the early 1990s, Azerbaijan became the reliable partner for, let's say, many countries, and specifically when we talk about Europe, in respect of supply of crude oil and oil products. Since the end of 2020, early 2021, Azerbaijan became the reliable partner for Europe, and we already mentioned this earlier today in respect of gas supply. So this is not only the new volumes of the gas to the European market, but this is, let's say, alternative. So this is the first time when the gas from the offshore fields of the Caspian Sea actually reached the European market with the finalization of the construction of a huge, let's say, project, 3.5 thousand kilometers of South Gas Corridor project, consisting of two stages, the TANAP and TAP, and this is the second stage. And you are absolutely right that now, currently, and when we talk about Azerbaijan, the priority for us now is to focus to the green, to the production of alternative energy. And here we have several, let's say, important pieces of news. The one is our region is extremely rich by alternative energy sources. Based on the reports of leading companies in the field, only Azerbaijani sector of the Caspian Sea contains 157 gigawatts of wind electricity power. In Azerbaijan, totally, we talk about 200 gigawatts. This is a huge project. Another thing that when we talk about, and there's a huge need in additional energy, electricity specifically on the European continent. We know this, and specifically when we talk about the green, and this is also one of the important aspects of MOU signed between European Union Commission President Madame von der Leyen, President of Azerbaijan, Mr. Aliyev, in July 2022. So one of the dimensions of this cooperation talks about cooperation in the supply of green electricity to the European market. So we have resources, there is a demand. And then here also I would like to mention that already in December 2022, there was signed a quadrilateral agreement between Azerbaijan, Georgia, Romania, and Hungary in respect of the production of green electricity, from Azerbaijani sources, and delivering this to the territory of Georgia. Then construction of undersea cable power from Georgian coast to the Romanian coast, and further to Romania and Hungary, the green electricity. At the moment, we are dealing with the feasibility study of this project. In the first stage, it is considered to be 4 gigawatts supplied with potential increase. And while we are in the stage of the feasibility of this project, already a number of other countries, namely Bulgaria and Serbia, actually expressed their willingness and interest to join this green electricity project. We believe that our region has a huge potential, and from one side, it might be a serious booster for our economy for the future decades, and at the same time, extremely important dimension of widening cooperation between Azerbaijan and number of European countries. Another positive, let's say, side is that we already successfully managed to attract a number of foreign investors into this area, and number of solar and wind power stations construction already underway, ongoing, which means that these projects are also very positively considered by foreign investors. So this is very promising area, and we believe that in coming years we will be having more and more new positive news in this area.
Again, thank you so much for that pause. And now we will conclude these ambassadorial addresses by looking at perspectives from Central Asia and Turkey. I should say we'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that also present here, at least for part of this morning, was His Excellency Elin Suleimanov, the ambassador to Azerbaijan, from Azerbaijan. So a pleasure to have him here. We will now turn in the order of the program you see, and we will begin with Ambassador Magjan Ilyasov, ambassador from Kazakhstan. Your Excellency.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Excellencies, distinguished participants. I wish we would have a picture of the region with the Caspian Sea in the middle, because it actually really gives you the understanding of how important the Caspian connectivity is nowadays. But let me start by allowing to express my gratitude to the Caspian Policy Center for organizing the first Caspian Connectivity Conference in London, for bringing together government officials, business leaders, and diplomats interested in the future of the Caspian corridor. Throughout history, Kazakhstan has been a crossroad between East and West, North and South, and gained reputation as a trusted and a reliable partner. In the context of the current reconfiguration of global supply chains, the acute energy challenges in Europe, and the need for new alternative routes that link Asia and Europe, connectivity has become a notion of strategic importance. Following the devastating effect of the global pandemic and uneven economic recovery, the international community now faces increased polarization. Established transport and logistics supply routes rupture has seriously impacted region's economy and its foreign trade and transit potential. Therefore, Caspian Corridor can serve not just as a solution, but a long-awaited opportunity for Central Asian countries to expand economic and trade borders. And I speak here on behalf of my colleagues from Central Asia, because again, if you would look at the map, you would see that from all Central Asian countries, it is only Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan that actually have access to the Caspian Sea as a land bridge. But the countries that do not have that access, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, they still have a potential to supply their commodities to the global markets via Caspian corridor. According to the World Bank, the development of transit and transport potential can contribute to up to 15 cumulative GDP increase in the economies of Central Asian countries. The middle corridor is a vital alternative to the northern corridor in order to export oil resources and food supplies to European countries. It is more economical and faster compared to the northern corridor. It is 2,000 kilometers shorter, has more favorable climate conditions, and shortens the travel time by threefold, up to 15 days compared to the traditional sea routes. More than 80% of land transit traffic along east-west corridor that passes Caspian Sea passes through the territory of Kazakhstan, and my country in particular has a massive potential and ambition to become a key part of that sustainable supply chain. With the second largest proven hydrocarbon reserves in Eurasia after Russia, Kazakhstan is a reliable supply of oil and gas to mitigate the global energy crisis. But for that, we need the investments from foreign partners, and I think it is worth these investments because the transit corridor has been not a new idea, but 30 years ago when our countries became independent, there was active discussion of that, but due to political reasons, it never really took off. Maybe this time we'll put an effort and make this route a feasible and reliable, not an alternative, but a route of itself that can serve independently to be a logistical bridge between East and West. Again, for my country, it's not just to be a transit territory, but my country can become an original source of supply of many strategic materials. We spoke about hydrocarbons, but Kazakhstan is also a global leader in critical raw minerals and can play a crucial role in bolstering global supply chains and emerging technologies. We're talking about lithium and all the rare earth metals that are needed for electric batteries. Kazakhstan possesses the world's 6th largest natural mineral reserves deposits and rank in top 10 for total mineral production, excluding oil and gas. Kazakhstan deposits more than 60 precious and non-ferrous metals for exploration and development. We are a leading producer of uranium, up to 45% of global market output, titanium, chrome, and other minerals. Many more deposits and fields are still unexplored. Kazakhstan also makes a significant contribution in ensuring regional and international food security. We are the world's top 10 largest exporter of grain crops, annually supplying over 5 million tons of wheat and 1.5 million tons of flour. Today, Kazakhstan has also become one of the world's leading producers of flaxseed and increased its oilseed exports to 1 million tons. We fully support global efforts to address the climate emergency. Our internal priorities are energy transition and fostering green economic development. Kazakhstan can become a regional or maybe even a global powerhouse for renewable energy, as a colleague from the Department of Energy of the United States mentioned that, with immense power generation potential in wind and solar energy on the shores of the Caspian on the Kazakh side, and that big reservoir of water nearby, we can become a green hydrogen hub for that part of the world. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development estimates that the Middle Corridor will further expand its annual capacity by 250,000, 300,000 containers every year by 2030. To achieve these targets, we're working to introduce digital solutions and upgrade infrastructure. A relevant roadmap for the simultaneous elimination of bottlenecks and development of this route through the territories of Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey has been signed in November last year. We invite all interested parties to take a very active part in the development of ports of the Caspian Sea, in the digitalization of the infrastructure, in joint production of transport vessels, and establishment of logistic warehouse infrastructure. Development of the reverse cargo transit along the Trans-Caspian route from Europe to the east can be potentially considered in the near future. A Kazakh proverb says, the key to prosperity is cooperation. And my country is open to work constructively and engage with strategic partners and investors on turning the Caspian Sea into the sea of opportunities. I thank you for your attention.
Okay, and next, representing the Kyrgyz Republic, His Excellency Ambassador Ulan Jusupov. Sir.
Good morning, dear conference participants, dear Excellencies. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the Caspian Policy Center for organizing this important event aimed at discussing our cooperation in the areas such as regional connectivity, energy, and economy in the Caspian region, as well as UK involvement and opportunities regarding such avenues. I would like also to congratulate the Caspian Policy Center for starting an active work in London and hosting its first major event. Our region has unique history, a rich and diverse cultural heritage, and great potential for large-scale cooperation. Central Asian region is characterized by a significant diversity of both opportunities and challenges. Large reserves of natural resources, significant demographic potential, transit opportunities in the center of Eurasia create all the conditions for joint, mutually beneficial cooperation and development. Our region is strategically located at the crossroads of various civilizational and geopolitical systems, acting as a kind of bridge between Asia, Europe, and Middle East. In this context, I would like to highlight the successfully functioning regional platforms in the C5 format with United States, with Russia, with China, with Japan, Korea, the European Union, India, and others. The representatives of the kindred peoples of Central Asia are proud of our common past, our many thousands of years of history and culture. We have much in common in traditions and customs. Much brings us together in terms of similarity of mentality, psychology, and worldview. I would call all this our common asset and a very important competitive advantage. Therefore, knowing this, we are gradually moving towards the understanding that our region can be formed as a single geoeconomic space in which all forms of economic cooperation and interaction can be successfully formed. In our region, the security issues and new challenges we face, such as climate change, can be addressed together. At the same time, the development of regional transit, transport, and logistics potential should become the main driver of growth for the economies of Central Asia. It is its priority active development that will stimulate the integration of the regional economy of Central Asia into the world economy and ensure interconnection within the region. In this context, the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway construction project, along with others, is one of the important regional projects. The new railway road is designed to become the shortest road between the region and Europe, to open access to the markets of Southeast, Western Asia, and the Middle East. The implementation of this project will have a large cumulative and multiplier social economic effect for the countries of the region. Another competitive advantage of Central Asian region is the wealth of natural raw materials, primarily mineral and energy resources, which represent a huge potential for joint mutually beneficial cooperation and development. As for Kyrgyzstan, I would like to note that it is a young country with a dynamically developing society that has chosen the path of democracy, political and social economic reforms. We have made significant progress in strengthening democratic institutions, promoting the rule of law, and protecting human rights. Thanks to skillful leadership, ongoing reforms, and proper tax administration, the budget of Kyrgyzstan has doubled over the past 2 years. Kyrgyz legislation is adapting to international standards, which will make it highly functional, transparent, and clear for foreign partners. The country has a fairly developed private sector, which has a great potential and opportunities for further expansion and consolidation. The population of Kyrgyzstan is distinguished by high and widespread education, as well as the presence of talented and capable youth. We have a large resource of natural resources, most of which have not yet been explored. A large hydropower potential. We can also note that we are leaders in the region in the production of textile products, as well as in the field of tourism, both areas that represent great potential for the development of not only the national but also regional economy. In this context, Kyrgyzstan is deeply interested in the implementation of joint regional projects aimed at expanding cooperation in all potentially beneficial economic areas, in particular in the field of transport, communications, construction, agriculture, and others. We must use these resources and opportunities to unlock the potential of our region, expand trade, investment, and exchanges of experience that will not only benefit our peoples, but also contribute to wider stability, peace, and development in Central Asia. The Kyrgyz Republic is ready to work hand in hand with partners in the region, as well as in Europe and America, in addressing common issues, developing dialogue, and finding sustainable solutions. Here I would like to touch only one area. This is a huge hydropower potential of 252 large and medium-sized rivers in Kyrgyzstan, of which only about 10% has been developed. The potential of renewable energy resources in the Kyrgyz Republic is estimated at 840 million tons of reference fuel per year. By 2050, we set as a goal of achieving carbon neutrality primarily through the use of renewable energy sources. In this regard, Kyrgyzstan is interested in the regional cooperation and is ready to propose investment projects for consideration, including the construction of large hydroelectric power plants in the Kyrgyz Republic, as well as the other areas of renewable energy sources, including on the principles of public-private partnership. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in Kyrgyzstan, almost all energy produced is green, since it comes from hydropower, which means that all industry and manufactured products belong to the category produced from green energy. Our country has taken a firm course towards a development of green economy. The concept of Kyrgyzstan, the country of a green economy, has been adopted. At the beginning of 2023, President of the Kyrgyz Republic has put forward an initiative to restructure the state external debt of Kyrgyzstan using the mechanism of its conversion to the projects in the field of green economy. We hope that our partners in the United States and Europe will support the country's initiative. In conclusion, I would like to note that once again, that Central Asia and Caspian is a region of great new opportunities, as well as one of the region's drivers of future world development. Thank you.
And next, representing the Republic of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Ambassador Said Rustamov.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to see you all here. Thank you. And first of all, let me echo my colleagues and all speakers to express appreciation to the organizers, to the Caspian Center for this wonderful event. It's definitely very important topics discussed today. We heard a lot from speakers, so I'm not going to repeat what was said from my colleagues, but also I would like to echo them some of the points and just to underline some of the topics which is important for my country as well. So, of course, all the topics which we discussed today is connectivity, energy, economy. It's very topical for Uzbekistan. My country today is emerging, persistently emerging as a Central Asia powerhouse, and the strong. We see the economic growth in Uzbekistan due to resource base, would it be natural resources, would it be human resources as well. Due to diversification of economy of Uzbekistan, by the way, that was one of the key factors that helped Uzbekistan to keep positive GDP during the COVID times. Uzbekistan was one of the few countries in the world who did that. And of course, one of the key factors is that Uzbekistan last several years implementing the large-scale reforms in my country, especially in the sphere of liberalization of economy. So it created huge opportunities for our economy to growth, and of course the opportunities to bring the foreign capital, foreign businesses, foreign technologies to Uzbekistan. Definitely, right now we see the tremendous growth in Uzbekistan. Just for last 5 years, our GDP, last year GDP reached 80 billion. Just for the 5 years, it increased for 20 billion US dollars. The growth of population, the growth of industry, of course, actualized the need for energy, need for trades, need for connectivity, and of course the need for technologies. So these are actually the priorities of my country. Of course, the transition in Uzbekistan, the modernization of Uzbekistan related to the foreign policy. I can say that I would echo my colleagues from Central Asia. Today, Central Asia, due to our common joint efforts, becoming more and more united. So it's a completely new atmosphere, political atmosphere, even economic atmosphere in Central Asia. So we see the more stability, we see more unity, and of course Central Asia becoming, getting more and more subjectivity. Actually, Uzbekistan was one of the part of this process. Uzbekistan initiated so-called mechanism of consultancy meeting on the level of the leaders of Central Asia. That was the first platform which combined only the leaders of the Central Asia states without any external, let's say, the powers participation. And that brought very positive benefits to our region. So the mutual trade increased, increased in our region. Of course, it's mutual. I'm not talking even the mutual trust and mutual confidence. So a lot of long-lasting, let's say, the tensions in our region were eliminated. And right now we see the completely new, and we see the Central Asia becoming more consolidated, becoming more united region, not just united by the countries which are connected through common history, through common traditions or culture. And of course, this also brings some kind of synergy. It brings attention to the Central Asia from the businesses, from the other countries, from our partners. And I would like here to also underline the importance of the connectivity. You know, the Uzbekistan is one of the 2 countries in the world which is double locked. And of course, we know better than probably anyone else the importance of the connectivity. So we are, it's one of the main priorities of our foreign policy of Uzbekistan. We are working on different options to increase our connectivity, to increase our trade routes and connections to the world. Would it be the southern corridor, including the Afghanistan? But also, if we're talking today on the connectivity to the West, it's also very important direction. So definitely the connectivity to the Western countries, to European countries, we see through the prism of several aspects. It's a support, definitely, in our transition of our energy, trade sector, of other sectors. It's also the source of technologies, and especially in the green sector, and especially in the green, to transform into the green economy. Central Asia, it's not only could be the kind of the part of this energy source, but it also could be the manufacturing hub, and which my colleague from the Kazakhstan, which ambassador from Kazakhstan mentioned. So we can produce a lot of manufactured production, and we can send it to the European and other markets. And of course, we consider West as through the prism of ensuring our energy and trade security as well. That's why it's very important for Uzbekistan. As I already mentioned, in November last year, we organized the first ever conference in Uzbekistan on interconnectivity between Central Asia and European Union. Of course, right now, our joint probably the priority is further integration of not only Uzbekistan, but also of our region to the global economic and transportation links. And I see here right now, it's very good to see that the attention of the international community to this part of the world is increasing. And that's very good because due to the current environment, current situation in all over the globe, so definitely Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Central Asia could be not the, could be the source of the a lot of new opportunities. Probably I will stop here. Thank you very much for that.
And the last speaker of this session, I'm pleased to bring up to the podium the Ambassador of Turkey, His Excellency Osman Kore Ertaş.
Thank you very much. I'm actually quite happy to see the Caspian Forum doing its first event in London. I should admit that this is something belated, but it also shows that the lack of interest, actually, in part on part of Europe towards this very important, strategically vital region. I agree with my Kazakh colleague that we should have a map here, actually. And a simple look at the map actually speaks a million about the strategic importance of this vast region. Imagine that on one edge you have Russia, on the other edge you have China, and in between there are vast natural resources, and obviously the keyword is connectivity. As countries of the region, again, as my Kazakh colleague mentioned, we have been trying to tap this potential for more than 3 decades. We remember our former presidents, prime ministers who worked tirelessly to put concrete projects in action. And I remember during my time in Washington as well, the US was a huge driving force. Ambassador Morningstar, for example, was someone that was very well known by many of us. And the result is concrete, it's obvious. We now have Kazakh oil, Azerbaijani oil going to the Mediterranean through pipelines. We have rail connections literally connecting China to Europe. We have gas pipelines getting Azerbaijani gas all the way to Italy. And now, obviously, it's time to work on bringing the Turkmen gas, again, through this infrastructure. Obviously, connectivity is very much related to geopolitics, and geopolitics is changing quite fast everywhere in the world, but also in our region. Not only because of this illegal war in Ukraine, but also many recent developments, the war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, the developments in Georgia, events in Iran. All these things are affecting actually the whole region. For example, the Honorable Foreign Minister of Azerbaijan mentioned about Zengezur corridor. This is so vital to have another land link from Europe to the region, but everything is, up first to Armenia and more so to Iran, for example. And we'll see whether we'll be able to realize it. So the thing that we need now to tap all these important potential is international partnership and international cooperation. And for this, we need our Western partners to be more involved in these major projects, financially and politically as well, because it goes hand in hand. Geopolitics go hand in hand with all these projects. If we do not pay attention to the region, these things will take time, and other actors will continue to take hold in the region. When we say connectivity, it's not only vital for the region, for ourselves, but it's also vital for European welfare and European security. Maybe some of you might know, we recently signed a deal with Bulgaria, for example. And according to this deal, the LNG that we are getting, mostly from the US, will be regasified in Turkish terminals. And every year we promise to send them 1.5 BCM of natural gas. This is approximately half of their annual need. So here you also see how the game is changing and how vital this region is for the energy security, not only for Southeast Europe, but the whole region. In terms of our individual efforts, bilaterally and regionally with the countries, actually we covered a lot of ground. If you look to the last 2-3 decades, you can see it in investments, you can see it in trade figures. For example, with Kazakhstan, we are now talking about a 10 billion trade. It's now more than 8 billion. With Azerbaijan, it's more than 6 billion. With Uzbekistan, it's about 4 billion. With Georgia, we are talking about 3 billion volume. Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, they are above 1 billion. All these infrastructure projects are in place, and within the organization of the Turkic states, As you know, this has started as a kind of cooperation platform, and now it's a real, literal organization now. We are working on easing customs procedures, so literally creating a simplified customs corridor in the region, facilitating the trade, eliminating the barrier, and finally, we also took an important step in creating a Turkic investment fund. So we're also now focusing on the finance side of our joint efforts. And obviously, energy is central part of all these larger regional efforts. And as the Deputy Undersecretary mentioned, there are many different pillars of this equation, including decarbonization as well. In all these aspects, it's key to work together, to have more focus in the region, focusing on connectivity through concrete projects. So on our end, we'll continue to work with our partners, with our brothers in the region, and we will also continue to work with our Western partners. And obviously, we are looking forward to more cooperation with the post-Brexit UK in that sense. Thank you.
Well said, and a perfect way to end this first series of commentary. I should say, listening to the ambassadors and representatives, officials who spoke in this session, they gave us honest, substantive, and meaningful comments and remarks on the challenges of connectivity, but also all the opportunities and areas within which these developments are taking place. Again, it's very convenient to say not much is going on, but boy, once we got under the surface, we realized there is quite a bit, and we see opportunity for development. That will be the theme of our two roundtables that will come very quickly in areas of economic growth, energy investment, and development in the Caspian region is the theme of Roundtable 1, and then of number 2, opportunities and challenges of energy and energy security in the region. And so I'm looking forward to hearing the comments made during those sessions. And I should just add one final substantive comment is when we hear these remarks from officials representing the US, the UK, Turkey, as well as countries from the broader Caspian region itself, I'm reminded that sort of the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, it's also the mother of innovation and connectivity. And I think that's what we're seeing too. When crises and challenges arise, it's surprising how quickly and how effectively people can work when needed. So with that, I want to thank all of the speakers this morning, as well as the audience for participating. We're going to take a break now. 15 minutes, perhaps. We'll say 15 minutes. We're running a bit late, but that's okay. And it would be great to then come back and we can begin the first roundtable. So coffee, refreshments are outside. Thank you so much. Okay. Great. Well, welcome back. And we're now, that's a magical term. We're now in a more discussion-focused environment. We've heard the presentations again on the region, connectivity, the challenges therein. Well, let's dig deeper into these areas for growth, energy investment, and development in the Caspian region. And also, I would say, where are some of the problems, challenges that can arise? And what would be the immediate tasks that countries in the region should do, to establish these promised links in international trade and investment? Joining me and individuals willing to offer their thoughts on this, pleased to have Dr. Talay Ziyadov, who's the Director General of the Baku International Seaport. I should say, fellow Georgetown Oya, for his master's, PhD here in the UK at Cambridge. He was previously has held positions such as Deputy Director of the U.S.-Azerbaijan Chamber of Commerce. He's an Assistant Dean at the Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy, works and focuses on transportation, logistics, commerce, and I would say looking at ways to connect Azerbaijan and the greater Central Asia region. Also with us is Mr. Ben Godwin, who's the head of analysis at PRISM. It's a political risk management group. His focus is on mining, energy, ESG, decarbonization, has a particular country interest in Kazakhstan, but knowledgeable of the broader region, and we're going to get his perspective looking probably more from the Central Asian side. And then finally, our third presenter will be Mr. Mamika Morjanik-Nelly, who is the Director General of the Batumi Multimodal Terminal. I should say I was happy to have visited Batumi several times over the last 3 decades. And I really, just firsthand, this is one of these ports that's not just you see that the Black Sea is this zone of growth, but also how vital it is to the Caspian region. I should say that he was ambassador, he worked in the Embassy of Georgia ambassador to Georgia, Embassy of Georgia to the US, Canada, and Mexico, was particularly looking at commercial affairs, and was an ambassador, I should say, of Georgia to Turkmenistan most recently, which I would argue, if we're looking at trans-Caspian dynamics, this is one of the key ones that we really need to wrestle with and figure out how to solve. So with that, we'll go in the order of these presentations. Each speaker is told 5 to 7 minutes to make some initial remarks. And then we're really going to turn it over to you to ask questions, thoughtful remarks, so our panel can answer. And that's what we'll do for the next hour. So Dr. Ziadov, first to you.
Thank you very much. So with your permission, I stand, because it would be easier for me to visualize what I'm going to show you. It's a pleasure to be back in London after a break. And of course, it's a pleasure to participate at Caspian Policy Center event, because we've participated in some of them in DC, but this one is certainly a first one in London. Hopefully there will be a series. Why? Because the topic is critical. Often times pass and we turn back and we say, oh, this moment in history was very critical. I think we have come to a position in a moment that our region is going through a transformation, and this transformation will have a great impact for the decades to come. So we are actually in the process of making that as we speak. And I will show you a couple of slides, because these are important ones. As you know, close to 95% of the trade between East Asia and Europe is done through Suez Canal. About 5% is done by airlift. Air traffic is, of course, expensive. In terms of volumes, of course, 95% is on the sea freight, but that 5% in terms of volume, in terms of value, accounts for about 25% of the trade that is being done. But more recently, of course, some of this trade has been started to shift to rail cargo, but primarily in the northern route through Russia. In 2021, the statistics of Russian railways show that close to 700,000 containers have been moved from China to Europe and from Europe to China via Russian routes. Russian railways were expecting to quadruple this number by 2027, which meant that the container numbers were to increase more than 2 million a year. This is a substantial amount when you put into context the amount of containers that are moving in this region now. Last year in Port of Baku, we handled close to 52,000 containers. Not much. In the first phase, we can handle up to 100,000. In the next phase, we plan to increase more than 500,000. So to put this into context, 2 million or a million plus container number is a substantial amount of containers that are going to move. When we talk about middle corridor, often it is referred to two things. One, it's an energy-related middle corridor. And the second, when it comes to containers, often association goes to China, Europe. I give you some statistics. This is misconception, of course. Middle corridor is a vital connection of Central Asia to the global markets. Close to 96% of transshipments done through Port of Baku on the middle corridor is actually originates or destined to Central Asia. 96%. Chinese containers account in the container throughput, they account probably a quarter. In the overall trade transshipments through Port of Baku, it is less than 4%. Will it grow? It may, eventually. But at the moment, middle corridor is a vital link that links this region and Central Asia as a whole to the world, to Turkey, Black Sea, to Europe. European containers, European shares in this trade accounts more than 65, 70%, close to 70%. So this is a vital link between the region and the rest of the region and the rest of the world. So it is very important that we understand that. As we go into future, of course, when we refer to middle corridor, to me, middle corridor is Trans-Caspian corridor. Whether it is from Turkmenistan, whether it's from Uzbekistan or from Kazakhstan, to me, it means if it's transpassing Caspian Sea, that is a middle corridor. But currently, of course, when we refer to middle corridor, it's the one that goes from China, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey, Black Sea, Europe. Why? Because there is an association that we participate almost every 2 months. We meet, we decide on tariffs, etc. This does not include Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. But we are working on a separate kind of discussion to include Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan into this framework. And eventually, of course, Kyrgyzstan is going to be linked as well through an alternative link to China, which is going to be a very important. Azerbaijan, of course, as by its geographical location, stands in the very strategic point. We are the only country that is squeezed between Iran and Russia, and hence we become a very strategic, but we are also a strategic gateway to Central Asia, and the one that links, in a way, the West and inner Central Asia. And that's why most of the corridors, whether it's east-west or north-south, become essential elements of linkages. The Zengezur corridor that was mentioned that passes through 40 kilometers of Armenian territory is an essential element. During the Soviet Union, the majority of trade that was done between the Soviet Union and the Middle East was done through this corridor, because the only railways that passed and linked Azerbaijan, Armenia, and then Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, and there was an offshoot to Iran and the Middle East. All that trade between Soviet Union and the region was done through this corridor. So if we manage to rebuild or restart this corridor, this will have also now, in the new context, an alternative route directly to Mediterranean, in addition to Middle East, of course. We will have a shorter, much shorter route directly to Mersin, Iskenderun ports of Turkey, which will have a great potential to then transshipments towards Central Asia. That's why this corridor is important to start. Azerbaijan hub concept, of course, I have been talking about this many times, but I don't want to bore with this. Transit is not the only priority for Azerbaijan. Transit is a requirement, it's prerequisite. When you have a transit, it's good. But you have an oil economy, you want to diversify. You don't need just the Chinese, European containers to bypass you. You want to take this container, take whatever is inside, add value on spot, and then re-export first to the region that is immediate around you. Within 1,000 kilometer radius, we have 140 million people. These 140 million people today eat order medicine, buy whatever they want, but all the goods come from suboptimal distances, which means far beyond 2,500 kilometers plus. It either comes from Dubai, Istanbul, it used to be from Moscow. So there is a need for this type of hub, distribution hub, for this particular region that we think is going to be in Baku, in the new port. And the idea of the hub it's not only about infrastructure, because infrastructure is just enabler. It's about the additional regulatory framework that you offer to an investor, and the free zone that is being created in the Alat, next to port, will include the port, the free zone, future city, and also airport. This will, in a way, generate a hub concept for this market, and that will serve also markets that are far beyond. Because within 3.5-hour distance, air distance, from Azerbaijan, you can reach 45 countries. You can bring a container from China in about 6 days. You add value with the zero tax, and then airlift it to the final destination. So this offers a very lucrative environment for potential investors. Currently, we have a first phase of the port, and it's better to, you are in the distance, so I show you on YouTube. I hope to show you this one. Let me see if I can get out of this slide. There is a YouTube drone footage that I want to show you, but I cannot get out of this slide. Currently, we have first phase of the port is about 15 million tons of cargo, and we are finalizing the expansion of the port for additional 10 million, which will enable us to increase our capacity to 25 million tons. The extension nearby that you see is the further expansion that will enable us to handle close to 500,000 containers that we plan to move between the region. So, and finally, I would like to show you maybe this YouTube footage, drone footage, and IT specialist is coming to my help. All these containers, of course, were coming at the time when the Russia-Ukraine war has begun. We got the increase of containers, considerable amount of increase in the containers. The current port that you see is about 12 berth areas. We are focused on containers, ro-ro transshipments, rail transshipments. It's well organized, and we are also building a fertilizer terminal that is going to serve for transshipment of Central Asian fertilizers like carbamide, sulfur, from Uzbekistan as well. Now we are finalizing a grain terminal, an agreement for grain terminal, which will enable close to 1 million tons of grains, particularly from Kazakh grains. And there is also discussion about a sugar terminal that is going to serve the other way around to Uzbekistan. So all these terminals actually enable to sort some of the supply chain problems, because sometimes you may have rail wagons but not ships, and sometimes you may have ships but not rail wagons. So when you are able to store them, you are able to find the right tuning for solving the supply chain. As you can see, there's plenty of areas for expansion. So this is the area at the junctions of north-south and east-west transportation corridors. Hope to see you in Baku and show you this in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. and a good visual conclusion to your remarks, we'll now turn it over to Ben. Ben Godwin, please.
Thank you very
Dave?
much. Yeah, so just to quickly introduce myself and what we do, we're working with investors across the region, all the way from Turkey through into Central Asia, some business in Ukraine. And the investors that we're working with, they're a combination of direct investors that have, physical infrastructure on the ground, or they have licenses, be it oil and gas, mining, those kind of concessions, as well as capital markets. So we're working with a lot of the portfolio investors in the region, those that have an interest in fixed income or in equities. And so, day to day, I'm speaking with people that are investing their money in the region and hearing about the opportunities and the challenges that they face. And so in that sort of context, I thought I'd just share a few ideas, really just throw out a few ideas, and then hopefully we can follow up on any of them that are interesting in the discussion. I think it's safe to say that 2022, the events of 2022, have created a real opportunity for the region. They've created a moment. But all of the opportunities that have been discussed today don't require a moment. They require a lot of commitment, a lot of investment that we are seeing in the region, but there's still so much more to do. So if we're talking about Trans-Caspian, it's port capacity on both sides of the Caspian Sea. If we're talking about Trans-Caspian oil, it's internal pipelines within Kazakhstan, and then improving the transit infrastructure on the Azeri side as well. These are not projects that can be done overnight. If we're talking about gas, again, we're talking about a Trans-Caspian, at least a gas interconnector that could bring 4, 6, 8, maybe 10 BCMA across the Caspian Sea. These require trust and commitment on both sides, be it European partners, North American partners, and our Caspian partners. So I thought I'd sort of volunteer a few areas where I see that, certainly sitting in London here today, but generally Europe and North America, have something that we can really offer the region that would be areas that we could develop. The first thing, and we haven't really talked about this yet, but it's kind of foundational, is finance. And it has to be said that certainly IFIs like the EBRD have been real leaders across the region in terms of developing infrastructure, enhancing energy security, water security, and engaging in the energy transition. But there's more that we can do. I mean, we're sat in the City of London now. Capital markets is critical, right? And we see some very interesting activity in Uzbekistan, a lot of proposals for capital market development there, particularly with public offerings of some of the large state-owned enterprises. Kazakhstan is on that journey, but I'd say with both Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, we're kind of at a pivotal moment as to how deep that movement into the capital markets, ideally through London, will happen. So there's a bit of an ebb and flow always with capital markets, but that's something that we in London have a real advantage that we can offer. And of course, once you get that kind of money flowing into the region, the possibilities are fantastic. And of course, adherence to capital market requirements within countries like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan improves governance, efficiency, transparency. So it's a really important and positive development that we can share with our friends and colleagues in the Central Asian region. Regarding oil and gas, we have recognized that a transition is taking place in terms of energy. And that does beg a question as to whether Western private oil companies are always going to be the main player in the region when it comes to oil and gas. They're certainly a major part of the story now, be it Azerbaijan or Kazakhstan. How that will look in the future when you have competition from national oil companies from Russia, China, and increasingly the Gulf region becoming interested in energy is a real question. And so I think in terms of oil and gas, it's about maintaining a strong relationship with the region, ensuring that companies are building on the projects that exist and expanding on those projects. But there's also obviously continuing discussions between governments and their investors as to how to proceed. And some discussions are more difficult than others, and we would certainly like to see the investment in climate improve across the region to allow those investments to go forward. Gas has been talked about a lot today. I think in the first instance, we're not talking about gas going into Europe. I think we need to be thinking about gas for Central Asian energy security, first of all. And then gas is a transition fuel. And then if we can boost that domestic capacity, or help boost that domestic capacity in the region, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan obviously facing gas deficits. Azerbaijan has huge ambitions for its own gas development as a transition fuel. If we can help these countries on those journeys by supplying expertise and capital and technology, then I think it's very much a case that in time, these countries can play a story in the energy transition in Europe. But until that happens domestically, I still think it's going to be very difficult to get large additional volumes of gas coming from Azerbaijan or coming even from Turkmenistan into Europe until that domestic capacity within the region is secure. And then moving further down the energy transition, renewables has been a real high point for investors. Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan have signed some very promising bilateral agreements with both Western investors, but also from the Gulf region, which are very impressive. And I want to highlight Kazakhstan here, because Kazakhstan's done something pretty special here, which is create a real vibrant and viable market of renewable energy companies. And it's one of the few markets in Kazakhstan that is functioning very effectively and functioning as a market. We've mapped out all of the players in legacy energy and renewable energy. And the first thing you notice when you look at this mapping is that there's a real diverse number of energy players in the renewable energy sector in Kazakhstan, both domestic investors, investors from Russia, China, and the West, and investors from the Gulf region. In terms of the Western engagement from Western energy companies, a lot of that has been on a bilateral basis, and we've seen a lot of movement from companies, obviously BP in Azerbaijan, ENI, Total Energies in Kazakhstan, and Shell to a degree as well. I was in Kazakhstan a week or two ago, and one of the trends that I've been following really over the last sort of 2 years is the emergence of a number of mineral resource prospecting companies, junior miners, the real wildcat guys that are out there, looking for greenfield sites and looking for new resources. When I first moved to live in Kazakhstan 10, 15 years ago, that was just not happening at all. But some real positive legislative changes have allowed that to occur. And we have both domestic companies and we have foreign investors that are spending their money getting hold of acreage and looking at that. And that's extremely positive, because one of the stories of the region, unfortunately, is that we have not seen the exploration work done over the last 30 years that we probably really would have wanted to see. And one of the interesting trends is that, of course, a lot of them are interested in the classic sort of gold, copper, but there's a growing interest in finding new uranium deposits and a new interest, of course, in critical minerals, as the Kazakh ambassador said today. And that's something where it's going to be a long journey for these countries. There's a lot of, or I should say there's quite a limited amount of mapping and work that's been done from the Soviet era. We're not really quite sure what the opportunities are. And this comes back to the commitment point. Maybe critical minerals are the hot topic of the day, but the journey for, say, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, even to a certain extent Turkmenistan, is going to be a long one, from having a licensing system that allows people to come in and invest and find security. We've yet to see one of these junior miners, for example, convert an exploration opportunity into a full mining opportunity, or to find a commercially viable exit. So we're talking 10, 15 years of commitment. And I know there's There is interest from the European Union. We've seen some agreements between Kazakhstan and the European Union. Certainly, the US government is very interested in the opportunity as well. Currently, 90% of critical minerals come from China, so it's a critical thing to see. Uranium is an area that we work in a lot as well, and that's a growing concern, I think, for Western investors in the sense that we know that Kazakhstan produces 45% of the world's uranium, but there are a number of challenges here. The immediate challenge of the moment is how to get uranium out of Central Asia. Uzbekistan is 7% of the world's supply. We've seen, I think, 2 trial shipments through the Baku port, but my understanding is that it's still a work in process. There's still more to be done there. The cost of such shipments is a concern as well. And so it would be good to see an alternative to the St. Petersburg route. But there's also the fact that we want to engage in this nuclear renaissance. And there are major Western investors and Western buyers within Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. But we're also seeing more and more of those volumes of uranium go either north to Russia or east to China, which raises some fundamental questions about how viable a nuclear renaissance is without engagement with key markets such as Kazakhstan for uranium, not to mention further down the nuclear cycle where Russia is a major player. So I'll stop there. I just wanted to throw out a couple of sectors, a couple of areas that we're working on, and perhaps we can have some further discussion on that.
Excellent, Ben. And our third and final speaker, and then we'll get to the questions to follow up on these very issues that you raised. Mamuka Bruzhikneli. Mamuka, microphone is yours.
Much. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. And it's a pleasure to be back in London. So I'll tell you a little bit about companies that I represent. This is Wondernet Express Investment Group. It's a joint venture of Georgian and American company called Tramo. We are probably one of the strongest growing company now in Georgia in transportation business. It was a direct foreign investment into the Ajara Autonomous Republic, largest directly from US. We made about $25 million investment, and it's all coming from private funders. So it's good that timing was very good that we made the investment, and Dr. Tali was together with us there when we opened this facility back in 2021. So as of now, we transshipped more than 1.2 million tons, and we are increasing it dramatically, basically every month. Just to compare, last month we had about 140,000 tons that we transshipped. We have the deepest port right now available in Georgia, and our berth is almost 12 meters, so we are able to handle about up to 50,000 tons per shipment, which is very good and very important in our part of the world. And definitely we are very happy that we as a company operate this berth, and definitely it helps with our partners as well, because we brought Turkmen urea through our corridor. I will still call it middle corridor, that's how it is. And we were the first company who brought Chevron and Chevron's sulfur through our corridor. Because historically always Chevron was going through northern route, through Russian ports, but we are very happy that in the last 6 months, Chevron started to move part of their product through our route as well. So, and they are using our terminal as a transshipment. We are working now with also a couple of very large foreign companies to bring their sulfur through our terminal. And what's also very important, we were the first ones who brought Uzbek urea through our middle corridor and through our terminal as well. So we all know what's happening in a region right now. Unfortunately, after Russian invasion to Ukraine, a lot of big companies and Western companies started to look at the alternative routes. And definitely, like, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and this middle corridor, right now it's the safest, fastest, and probably economically most attractive route for many of the producers. But definitely we need to do more, and we need to make more investment into our corridor, because we do face some problems there in regard of wagons, in regard of locomotives, and we need to see more modernization of a railroad system, because just ports or just terminals won't be able to work if a railroad system is not modernized. And so we definitely need to handle more cargo. We definitely need to, all of us together, like Georgian side, Azerbaijan side, we need to make more investments into our facilities and infrastructure. Definitely, we are very happy that Georgian government announced that we are going to get started with a new deep sea port, which is very important right now. And we as a company, definitely we will be one of the driving force of this port. And we are going to make a significant investment into the new port in Georgia. It will be a deep sea port, which will give us the opportunity to bring even more cargo into our corridor. We are definitely looking into the possibilities to get more investment, and we as a company are planning to invest more into the new railroad wagons. Right now, the challenge is that all these railroad wagons are produced in Russia. And definitely, we are looking for possibilities to purchase them somewhere else, and we are to communication with our friends and our partners outside of, let's say, Georgia, to somehow identify some wagons that we will be able to use it, at least in our corridor. But it's a big problem, it's a big challenge as well. But we as a company feel that definitely we will be able to solve this, again, solve this together with our partners, with the Georgian Railroad, with the Azerbaijan Railroad. And we are very happy that our strategic partner, Baku Port, is here together with us. We definitely work very closely with Baku Port, and we have daily communications with Baku Port, and that's very important because, if we need to work simultaneously together, and we need to grow together as well, because all this cargo that is coming toward our direction, ports again play very big role, and the railroads play very big role, and definitely all these logistics companies, including the representatives of the government, we need to work very closely to each other to make sure that our middle corridor will handle even more cargo coming from Central Asia. I agree with Dr. Talek that main cargo right now, what we see into our corridor is coming from Central Asia, and as distinguished ambassadors also mentioned in their speeches, Central Asia is dramatically increasing. Their economy is increasing, so it means that new factories will be there as well. So, and definitely these new factories, new facilities will need logistics corridors. So it means that more cargo will be coming toward us. And again, we are very happy to see that, together with the Georgian government, we will be involved in a deep sea port. And again, this will help us not just to attract more Western investors into Georgian economy, but it will help us to bring in even new players who are right now looking for the possibilities to bring their cargo through middle corridor. So that's where we stand right now, and as mentioned, I'm happy to answer if there will be any questions. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. As I said, I'm going to turn it to you, so think of those questions. And as you think, and I'll turn to you shortly, I have one question I want to throw out to get this started. You know, we're raising a number of different issues on energy, transportation, and obviously looking at outside investment risk analysis in terms of where might European, UK, US companies look to invest in the region, or what might be viable bets. As all three of you look at these challenges of connectivity in transportation, energy, we do often revolve on the countries around, you know, of China, Russia, the European states, US, UK, yes. A lot of the international investment dollars are there. But looking ahead, you know, the next 5, 10 years, if you were to start pinpointing other countries that either have an interest in the region or that you would like to see get more involved, that aren't ones I've mentioned, who are they? If we're talking about a multipolar, diversified global economy, who are these new actors that could come into Central Asia, or people who are, countries that are currently there that you may see enhance their role? And I'm thinking either of, you know, the South Koreas and Japans of the world, India. Obviously, we looked at Turkey as an example, the Gulf states. Any examples or thoughts that you have on where investment futures in the region, in the Caspian region, may come? And let's just go down the order here. So, Taleb, we'll start with you and work our way towards me.
To answer your question, I think it would be important to look at the structure of the trade between, let's say, Asia and Europe. If you analyze it, you will see that there are about 7 countries from the mainland of Europe, the core ones. These are primarily Germany, Netherlands, Italy, France, Spain, a couple of others, main ones from the core, that dominate the trade between Europe and Asia. These countries, primarily Germany, have been using northern route for a long time. Now that Middle Corridor became kind of a main alternative to it, most of these European countries started to look at this Middle Corridor much more seriously. But having said this, there is still, in a way, kind of suspicious look, doubtful look at, well, okay, what will happen tomorrow, the war will end, we will go back, type of discussions that are still ongoing, primarily by the European countries and the European companies. Whether tomorrow the war ends, you know, some trade goes back to original, you know, northern route, etc., I put this aside. The focus should be the routes that are going to link Europe and Asia are going to be multiple. So if we want the Middle Corridor to be sustainable long-term, we have to come and invest, which means up to now there was talk. Now we need concrete big companies that are in logistics, and I mean it because container business is similar to oil business. Not in all senses, but there are also dominant players in the container business, about 6 or 7, that need to come in a way and get engaged and start kind of getting into terminals in our part of the world and starting kind of building this transportation corridor much more sustainably. You mentioned Korea, India, of course, these, Japan, in addition to China, of course. These are going to be one of the major players that are kind of not only transship, but also going to get involved in moving out some of the cargoes and also supplying this region. But I think China is going to dominate this because without China's export and import potential, the region as a whole, or the cargo flow in the region as a whole, will not be able to reach its optimal levels. And yet, as I said, some of the European countries, US logistic firms, that are very much interested mostly in energy. Maybe they should also start thinking about also non-energy cargoes, because there is this 140 million people need to eat. They buy daily food, daily stuff. You know, there are lots of opportunities to serve this market in the new way. Thank you.
So thank you very much. It's a very interesting question. What we see in our experience actually is that definitely like in Georgia on the Black Sea, US is quite, US companies have always expressed their interest, European companies, but we see right now a lot of like companies coming from Gulf countries. And definitely like, you know, like their appetite is growing in regard of like investment. We see also Japan and South Korea quite actively want to get into the Central Asia. And for example, urea factory in Turkmenistan is built by Mitsubishi. And now they are talking about another urea factory which will be built by South Korean company as well, Daewoo. So it's very good, and like, you know, definitely in last 2 years, like we had about like, you know, 3 times quite big companies coming from the Gulf countries as well, who expressed their interest, and which will be very good, definitely. And like, you know, we should look at, you know, I would say actually we need to be very careful who we will invite to be a player into the region. And definitely like, you know, this needs to be like, you know, more economically driven rather than politically driven. And and we need professional companies to come in. And definitely that's why in Anaklia port, which will be deep sea port, our let's say our advice to the government is that, like, you know, we would love to see Western companies coming in and be involved together with us in development of the port. And definitely, like, you know, we can look at some of the funds in Gulf as well, in Gulf countries. And again, their appetite is growing, which is, like, you know, I can say that it's very good. And definitely, like, you know, they can bring in their experience, they can bring in their knowledge of the field. So I think it will be very good in general for the region. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely concur with Mamuka and Tale. Just to take up the Gulf point, and actually South Korea and Japan, one of the reasons that they've been so effective, and it's the same with China and Russia, is there is a strong policy focus towards investing in the region. So you see a combination of sovereign-backed state-owned enterprises together with policy or development banks. And that is a model that local governments are very comfortable with across the region because they operate in a similar way. There's a large share of state-owned enterprises across these economies. And so when you're able to bring from, say, the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia, South Korea, you know, quasi-state enterprises working with state policy development banks, that's a very attractive model for the countries in the region, because it's a model that they understand and work with. So I mentioned capital markets at the beginning. The possibilities are enormous, but getting to the point where these countries are really able to benefit from global capital markets is going to be a challenge for Western investors. I'll just throw out one other name here, which is a little bit more long-term, and it's certainly a huge question mark. But I think we always have to have in the back of our minds Iran. I think, you know, Mamuka and I actually met in the Emirates a few weeks back, and one of the things, speaking to Emirati counterparts, particularly in logistics, and we see a lot of investment from Dubai ports across the region, is that they understand that, you know, it might be next year, it might be 5 years, it might be 10, 15 years, But sooner or later, the political calculation around Iran is going to change, and Central Asia will move from being sort of in the middle to being central. And the change of the political environment and the sanctions environment about Iran could be a real accelerant to the region's development. And the conditions may not be right now, but give it time and that calculation could change.
Excellent, and I should say, bringing up Iran is a good idea, and I think we may hear more of that as these sessions go on. Okay, you've had time to think. If you have a question, comment, please raise your hand, and happy to get it addressed by our panel.
Just a quick question, following up on the last set of dynamics mentioned. China moving through the middle corridor. I mean, China can push enough volume to completely swamp the corridor and choke out indigenous products moving through. And I think that's has to be one of the major considerations. We want to see products from Central Asia and the Caucasus move across this middle corridor as well. So how do you balance between the need to have China engaged on it, but not engaged so much as to choke off other competition?
Yeah, we'll start.
This is a good question and good kind of concern, but I don't see it as a major issue. Why? Because the nature of cargo that comes from Central Asia, they generally come in bulk, in wagons, in trucks, which is not the type of cargo that comes from China. Chinese cargo comes in containers predominantly, and it will remain as such. And this choking effect, I think, is not going to be a major issue because it will take a while for Central Asian cargo types to containerize. And not all cargo will containerize because bringing it in bulk makes much more economic sense. Because until Port of Baku, it comes in bulk, and from us it moves in wagons or hoppers to Georgian ports, and from there in big ships, it goes to the markets. So I think in the future, I don't think this will be a kind of any danger as a choking effect.
Do you gentlemen want to add? Yes. Next question. I guess up here, and then we'll go back. We'll take two questions. So first here, and then in the back.
Thank you. Nick Coleman from S&P Global. I have questions for Mr. Murcik-Nelly, and we might want to continue off the stage because we could talk for a long time. But you mentioned the Anaklia deepwater port. Obviously, it's a project that's been on the table for a long time. So what do you see as the obstacles and the prospects for overcoming those obstacles? And a second question, if I may, you mentioned, is just my curiosity, you mentioned that oil going by rail to Batumi has to be loaded in Russia, I think. Maybe I misheard you. So it means somehow the oil from Kazakhstan that Chevron is sending is unloaded and then loaded. Could you just explain to me the logistics of that to familiarize myself? Thank you.
Sure. I'll start with the second question. I didn't say oil. They are bringing sulfur through our port. So it's a bulk product that Chevron is producing in Kazakhstan. So they are bringing it by railroad, and they are bringing it to Azerbaijan, and then by railroad it's delivered to our terminal in Georgia. So it's produced in Kazakhstan and then shifted by wagons, on a railroad. It goes through Russia a little bit and comes to Azerbaijan and then to Georgia. But right now Chevron is working on an alternative route to bring it through Caspian Sea, actually, to avoid going through Russia. So that's what they are working on. Oil, in regard of oil, what Chevron is producing, it comes to Azerbaijan, and then by pipeline goes to Turkey, so in regard of oil. In regards of Anaklia port, it's definitely it was put on hold by Georgian government, which I personally think that was a very big mistake, because definitely today's what we have today, it showed that, like, you know, Georgia needs deep sea port. Not just Georgia, but I would say actually that, like, you know, whole region needs deep sea port. Again, as I mentioned, this deep sea port will give us opportunity to handle way more cargo what we are handling right now. And Central Asia and Caucasus itself as well, like, you know, it's increasing. Just in regard of fertilizers, there is about right now about 7 million tons that's available that can be shipped through middle corridor. Out of 7 million, we right now can handle about 3 million tons. So, like, you know, that's, we are losing basically 4 million tons that because of absence of deep sea port. So I think Georgian government has realized that time was lost, but, like, you know, we need to start doing something about it. Me as a representative of the private company, it's definitely from our side, we are pushing very hard. We are pushing Georgian government, we are pushing our investors as well, that, like, you know, we need to act, and we need to act very fast as well, because it will take us at least like 3-4 years to build this port and to make this port operational. Right now, as government has announced publicly and also gave us discussions what we are having with the Georgian government, they are assuring us, and they also included in a state budget that they are going to build it. Constructions, they will start somewhere October, November time. Definitely government wants to be a part of the project. Right now they announced that they want to have 51% into this project, but they are open for the negotiations, and like, you know, we as a private company, we would like to see government there for 20%, 25% max. But again, this will depend on many things, and this will depend on the negotiations what we will have with the government. Good thing is government is willing to take this risk and start initial investment into the project. So we'll see, definitely, like, you know, as they announced, and what's in state budget in October, November time, we should see action starting, and like we will see what government is planning to do. Again, it was very bad decision that it was put on hold. I wish we had this port right now. It would have given us more opportunities, and it would have been very good, not just for the private companies, but I would say actually it would have been very good for a region itself, but it is what it is. So we definitely, we would love to see this Anaklia deep sea port happening. So.
Sorry, is your shareholder Caspian Gas interested in investing in that?
Caspian Gas is not my shareholder. Caspian Gas is a shareholder of Batumi Oil Terminal, and they have under the management of Batumi Seaport. Terminal that I'm representing, it's a privately owned company, and it's owned by American company Tramo and Georgian company Adia. I don't know if Caspian Gas haven't expressed their interest into deep sea port as of now, and I don't think they will have an interest into participating in a deep sea port itself. Maybe in the future they will have an interest to build some kind of, like, you know, oil terminals there, but not as a participant of the port.
Much, and I should say, you'll definitely have a chance in not too long of time to continue the conversation and ask your follow-up questions. I'm interested in hearing these. I know we had a question, yes, in the back corner, the gentleman there.
Thank you for your informative roundtable. I have two questions concerning Iran. The first question is that do you think Iran could disrupt the growth of middle corridor, or it could cooperate and accelerate the growth of middle corridor? If yes, how? And the second question is that do you think canceling sanctions would help the middle corridor be more central, or remaining sanctions could help and would be beneficial for the trade and growth of middle corridor?
Oh, so we did get right back to Iran. Thank you. And excellent questions. Could Iran enhance, or is it a spoiler in the trade? And what about sanctions? Why don't, Ben, we start with you and work this way if people have comments.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say, and it's a point that Tali made generally, is the geopolitical conditions are so uncertain at the moment. One of the barriers to investment in new infrastructure is, well, what happens if the Russia-Ukraine war ends tomorrow and we go back to status quo ante? Where does that leave me, for example, in my investment? And I think that will be the case with Iran. You know, if there's movement under a Democratic administration, there's always the fear that in a few years a Republican administration can come and, you know, reverse the policy as we've seen in the past. So, you know, when I throw out the possibility of Iran, there has to be quite a concerted shift in the policy environment for that to happen. And even on the day that it does occur, that doesn't necessarily mean that investment flows in. I think, you know, with the JCPOA situation, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time and a lot of money thinking about Iran, only to sort of have the rug pulled from underneath them. So it will take a long time for Iran to emerge as a player in the region, even if the sanctions environment changes. Whether it's a concern or a competitor to the middle corridor, perhaps it's more for my colleagues, but my own thought is that the more routes and the more trade that you have involving the Central Asian and South Caucasus is only a positive thing. The more that you can increase the possibilities of the region, you know, cutting across. We're not middle corridor, you know, the thought is that it's about China to Europe. But what about China to the Middle East and Africa? Yeah, what about South Asia up to Europe? There doesn't have to be a limit as to the middle corridor simply being east-west, and that's what it's all about. And so if we can think about, reimagine the geography of the region in that context, then I think, you know, there's huge possibility for the entire region, but I'll see what colleagues have to say.
Again, thank you very much for very interesting questions. And so I'll start with this, that cargo in a region is more than enough if, let's say, route on Iran will open up. In the beginning, definitely I would like to mention that Iran itself is a producer of many products. And Iran also, there is a challenge as far as I know in regards of the railroad system in Iran. There are several tunnels as far as I know coming from, if you're bringing cargo from Central Asia to, let's say, one of the ports in Iran. And the biggest issue there is the railroad gauge size. As you know, Central Asia using the, let's say, former Soviet gauge size, and Iran has a different gauge size. So for wagons, it will be, for railroad, it will be very difficult to transport this cargo. Obviously, there will be cargo going by cars, And it's still going to for today as well, actually, from Turkmenistan, from Uzbekistan, even from Tajikistan. And it goes through Iran, and then it goes to Turkey today. But as I mentioned, like, you know, volume of cargo is increasing in Central Asia. So there is a limitation what like middle corridor can handle as well. Like, you know, we cannot move all the cargo that is produced in Central Asia and other places through the middle corridor. Definitely there needs to be alternative ways there as well. And the good thing will be that, like, you know, definitely when there is a good competition, then definitely, like, you know, all of us need to work, like, you know, offer our clients something good and something modern. So that's like, you know, I think it will be very good for everyone. But we'll see, like, you know, definitely there is a long way to go, and we'll see what will be the development, and we'll move with the development as well.
I should say, Talay, you have the honor of making the last remarks because we'll want to close up so we can get to our next panel. So, to you, sir.
Iran is an interesting case, of course. Being one of the largest countries in terms of population, it's, when I mentioned, for example, 140 million people, 55 million people is actually in the northern Iran. That is within the 1,000 kilometer radius to our port. So for us, this is potentially is a customer market. So in maybe 10 years' time, a student in let's say, in Tabriz will order their iPhone cover. We will 3D print them, deliver to them in less than 24 hours. So Chinese may be producing it for cheaper, but they will not be able to act as efficiently as we are because of the distance to the final customer. So in that sense, of course, Iran is a part of the region and an important economic player as well. Can it spoil the middle corridor? I don't think so. Middle corridor as it is, it's ongoing. Can it act as a spoiler in Zangezur? It can, it does currently. But will it change? I hope it will, because this corridor is not against the kind of Iran or anyone else. This is an important corridor. And the most important part, we often forget the main part of the trade as a whole. This region needs to grow together, yes? The Silk Road in ancient times, again, I go back to, we focus on corridors, but we forget the nature, economic notion of the Silk Road. Silk Road was based on hubs that were created. And these hubs were within, I don't know, 1,000 kilometer proximity. So if one corridor was closed, they used alternative corridors. In the future, Iran will act as an important player for the trade between Europe and Asia, and not between Europe and Asia in general. Iran is also important for the north-south corridor that Azerbaijan is part of. As I said, it also links Persian Gulf and also India. So that route is going to gain importance. When sanctions lifted, I don't know, but by the time sanctions lifted, I think Azerbaijan will have its hub that is going to serve part of Iran. It's only going to complement that future that we are envisioning. Thank you.
Goodness, thank you. And I should say these final remarks, again, reinforced what we were looking for with respect to growth, investment, and development in the Caspian region. It's not necessarily a pessimistic assessment or an optimistic one. Let's just call it a realistic assessment. And so for our three speakers, could you please join me in a round of thanks and applause? And with that, we'll simply say, let's take a 10, 15-minute break. We'll try to keep it a good time and get back to our final session on opportunities and challenges in the region. So again, thank you so much.
On the Caspian Connectivity Conference, Opportunities and Challenges of Energy and Energy Security in the Region. We have very distinguished panel here, and I know we are in between you and the lunch, but still I think this is going to be an interesting conversation with the private sector, government, and also financial sector with us. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation. We have very distinguished people in this panel. Dr. Eric Rudenshield, Senior Advisor with USAID in the US. Vitaly Badarbayev, who's coming on the stage right now, Deputy Vice President of the State-owned Company of Azerbaijan Republic. Dr. Michael Dennison, Senior International Advisor for BP, and also Halil Emecan with the Centricus partner. It's an exciting time for the region on the energy, and we already alluded into this in our previous conversation when we talked about energy transition and also transit of energy from the Caspian region. Caspian region is becoming more and more important in the, especially for the European energy security as well, in the sense that what we see what's happening in Ukraine and Russia's supply of energy. And obviously, Caspian offers not only hydrocarbons, but also huge renewable potential on wind and solar. In that perspective, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Eric Rudenshield, who's with us here in London today. Thanks traveling all the way through Atlantic. Former director for Central Asia at the National Security Council in the United States. Dr. Rudenshield is a senior development advisor at the United States Agency for International Development as well. He's a foreign policy and national security expert, over 30 years of service in the US government, including, as I said, National Security Council, Capitol Hill, and the USAID, and also the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, UNDP, and with a number of international development assistance implements. He has extensive experience on a range of foreign policy issues, including human rights, democracy, international affairs, development, greater power competition, and counterterrorism. His areas of focus include regional expertise in Central Asia and the Caucasus, Eurasia, Europe, and national security issues including Russia, Iran, and China. As this region is just in the middle of this all three areas that I mentioned, Rudenshield most recently served from 2018 to 2022 as the U.S. National Security Council Director for Central Asia under 2 presidents and 3 national security advisors. Quite a career at this point. And Dr. Rudenshield is also coordinated implementation of the U.S. national security strategy for Central Asia, including the facilitation of new partnerships with Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan, and elevating deeper U.S. engagement with Central Asia through the C5+ mechanism. Dr. Rudenshield is also board member for the Caspian Policy Center with us in Washington. Please, Dr. Rudenshield, the floor is yours.
Is there any time left?
Oh.
If you don't mind, I'm going to actually stand and talk. I'm fighting the ravages of jet lag, and so I think it'll be easier for me to bounce around up here and keep my blood circulating. So in a lot of ways, I should say I'm honored and I appreciate the Caspian Policy Center bringing me here to London, albeit for a brief visit, and for giving me the challenge of trying to talk about energy connectivity in this region in a few moments. Because most of the panel is focusing on the Western Caspian, I'm actually going to focus my presentation on the eastern side, Central Asia. And I think people have spoken eloquently to the opportunities that exist in energy connectivity and certainly the opportunities for security. I will be highlighting a lot of the challenges, because I think if we don't get the challenges out on the table and discuss them, then we're sort of putting things under the carpet, and we're not going to be able to actually address them as they need to be. So I've got several areas that I want to look at, and first is the internal energy security challenges, infrastructure. There are a lot of well-known Soviet legacies. There are gaps in connectivity. There are outdated and inadequate infrastructure across the entire Central Asia region. There's a lot of focus on leaky pipes right now. I think, the lack of connectivity between energy sources and power generation poses a significant challenge in some parts of the region. The extreme cold of the last winter highlighted the need to upgrade power generation and transmission. We need significant public and private sector investment in order to modernize and improve and provide more stable energy throughout the region. Climate change, and I'm sorry for those of you who've been watching the Chelsea Flower Show and been harangued by Monty Don about climate change. I'm going to give you more of the same. Much of this region depends upon glacial runoff for water and energy. Rising temperatures, United Nations Development Program said the Central Asia temperatures are rising faster than the global average, 0.5 degrees Celsius in the last 3 decades. Forecasting to increase between 2 and 5 degrees by 2085. Glacial decline. If we look at hydro-rich Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan sources of renewable energy, yes, but to quote President Rahmon, and it's a direct quote, more than 1,000 glaciers of Tajikistan have completely melted. The volume of the mass of the country's glaciers has decreased by almost 1/3 over a relatively short period of time. Both Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan use hydro to generate electricity for heat, and they have a very unstable supply through winter. There is a long-term need here, obviously, for change. Unsustainable water usage is an increasingly large challenge for the region. We all know the Soviet legacies of the river diversions of the Ural Sea and its impact. We're seeing a Caspian decline as we speak. Most of the Central Asian populations, the irrigation zones, and the industrial enterprises throughout the region are concentrated along the lower reaches of the Amu and Sir Darya rivers, downstream. In the 1990s, both Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan kind of repurposed Soviet irrigation systems in favor of prioritizing energy production, and that's produced mixed results. But if you look at new demands on water systems, and I'll pick one example, the Kosh-Tepe Canal, which Afghanistan is constructing, they're looking to divert an estimated 1/3 of the flow of the Amu Darya River. Downstream, the impacts. One alone is the Tuyamuyan hydro complex, which is a system of interconnected canals, which, yes, is used for irrigation of agriculture, but it also is connected to hydro energy generation for Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and even part of Kazakhstan. I would note Karakalpakstan in the headlines, depends upon this system for its energy. If you look at the other countries of the region, the ones that are non-hydro rich, the Uzbeks, the Kazakhs, and the Turkmen, they generate oil, gas, coal, uranium. They sort of have a yin and yang energy system. They're contributors to methane heating in the region, yet the gas sales provide an important transitional alternative as green energy transition continues. There is a massive challenge of flaring and venting across the region. We have old leaky pipes. You have legacies from unstable energy grids. These are all issues that can be addressed, but certainly need to be. If I can go dig down just a little bit in discussing these, there is a reliance on underdeveloped legacy pipelines. Approximately 98% of Kazakhstan's natural gas reserves are located in the western part of the country. 85% of this is concentrated in just a few large fields. While Kazakhstan is a net exporter of energy, 42% of its population live in the north and central parts of the country, and they're not connected to the gas network. Gas reserves are in the western part of the country. So instead, they burn coal. Kazakhstan relies on gas swaps and imports from Russia and Uzbekistan to meet its domestic need. There is a critical need for infrastructure development here. There are energy subsidies across the region. These are legacies from the Soviet era. Cheap energy has always been a sort of a given. But in this day and age, you just can't give it away anymore. And needed reforms come at a price. And I point to the January 22 protests in Western Kazakhstan that broke out after subsidized liquid natural gas prices were raised, which snowballed into nationwide protests. Domestic gas production is not profitable. There are low tariffs. There is a single gas processing plant in Kazakhstan that can't meet the demand. There is a need for increased processing, transport, and capabilities throughout the country. Aging infrastructure, I'm beating a dead horse here, but let's make sure it's dead at this point. In January 22, there are imbalances in the interconnected power grid, which caused power outages in major cities in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. It shut down trains, airports, heating plants, water plants, traffic lights in the middle of winter. Aging infrastructure. November 22, Kazakhstan's Ekibuztaz power plant, an accident there resulted again in tens of thousands being cut off without power or heat with major frost. This is a recipe for civic unrest. It is a set of frustrations. There's a need for complete modernization and upgrade of regional energy connectivity. Turn our lens here on energy security and energy exports. So China obviously has been discussed earlier today, and I think China's Kazakh energy cooperation is somewhat symbiotic. China's need to import energy for development and to diversify its import sources, and then you have Kazakhstan, which is aiming to diversify its export routes and expand its export volumes. Kazakh oil pipelines export to China have increased by 30% in 2022. But this appears unsustainable as China is buying Russian oil at a massive discount. So it seems unlikely that that will be able to continue in that kind of volume. Kazakhstan has just signed a long-term agreement last month to sell 30 tons of uranium to power China, and it will help Beijing shift its coal to nuclear transition. And I would say that we should note that that sale was counterbalanced by Kazakhstan selling part of uranium mine to Russia. Russia uses twice the amount of uranium that it produces domestically. Like Turkmenistan, the Kazakhs and the Uzbeks have agreed to export gas to China, but both of them had to renege on these agreements during a particularly cold winter last year, which produced domestic shortages. Tashkent announced that it suspended gas exports to China. Astana reduced them. Gas outputs in both appear insufficient to cover a rapidly growing domestic consumption and export obligations for Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Gas represents an increasing share of both countries' domestic energy supply, which is a major change. If you look back to 2013, 30% of the homes in Kazakhstan use gas. Now it's nearly twice that. Uzbekistan uses over 80% of its national energy, tying it to gas. The population in both countries is rapidly increasing, and so that demand for gas consumption in Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan is going to increase. Turkmenistan, as everyone knows, the world's fourth largest producer of natural gas, massive reserves, 80 billion cubic meters. But absent a Trans-Caspian gas pipeline, the country has really limited options. China is its major client at this point, but it's currently servicing debt on the pipeline, which has impeded the country's actual fiscal progress. And as a result, Ashgabat has actually undertaken some creative efforts and is servicing Azerbaijan through Iran, through very creaky, leaky pipes, but in what is actually an effort to increase energy stability in Azerbaijan and diversification for Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan has also agreed just recently to use existing Soviet-era pipelines to supply gas to Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan for the very first time. And I think this is an increasingly common and very positive, if I say historic, example of regional cooperation and the growth of regional cooperation in Central Asia, which is not something that we have been treated to very much in the last 30 years. Russia, Moscow maintains significant leverage over Kazakhstan's petrolific economy. 80% of crude flows through the CPC pipeline. That's nearly 20% of Astana's economy. President Tokayev seeks to reduce the reliance on the CPC and is pushing oil transit across the Caspian, and that is increasing. BTC exports are up. There's increased cooperation between Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey with Kazakhs, and all of that is to the positive. But as we've heard mentioned, there need to be increases in investment on boats, rail, locomotive, port improvements, simply to make this more cost efficient and to be able to increase the flows. Another area that I wanted to look at is inter-regional energy trade and security. Certainly the legacy infrastructure limits, they're expensive and time consuming to construct something new. The Trans-Caspian Corridor is the largest new effort to expand energy export across the region. There's a coordination of port and rail, digitalization, coordination and investments, streamlining of customs, increased number of bulk capacity ships and containers, port optimization. All of these are needed, but at the same time, we're actually seeing investments by countries in the region to undertake this, and there's a focus by international donors to actually help streamline these efforts. I mentioned the Turkmen-Iran-Azeri gas swap, which is another interregional energy example, a positive one. The interconnector or pipeline across the Caspian, this needs to be done soon, in my opinion, if it's going to have a real benefit. We don't want to see a real window of opportunity missed. There is the Russian-led gas union, as an example, between Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Russia. For Russia, this helps develop basically a route to Asian gas markets and replace EU markets, potentially foster as well Central Asian dependence on Russian gas, because normally Gazprom arrangements come with the purchases of gas infrastructure, transmission systems, and I think the examples in Kyrgyzstan, Belarus, Armenia, all I think are not lost on Astana and Tashkent. So it'll be interesting to sort of see how that plays out. Climate change has certainly produced challenges and potential conflict. We've seen upstream water users save water in their reservoirs for winter power generation, which causes tensions in the southern parts of the country, in the region. And there have been numerous examples of back and forth between countries using water as a tool to exert influence and basically to get what countries need. So as Lenin asks, что делать, what is to be done here? I think certainly we see there's a shared objective in the West to see the Central Asia region and by extension the Caspian and the countries in it to be more self-sufficient, resilient, and independent. If you sit in on any event where Washington speakers discuss the region, there's a mantra of support for the region's independence, its territorial integrity, and its sovereignty. I mean, this articulation is an important principle, and it's mirrored now in many places. We see multiple C5, the Central Asian 5 countries, engagements, and now a growing B5, business platforms that are coming online. All of these are positive to help develop creativity and connectivity from Central Asia across the Caspian to Europe and to global markets. Almost lost in the public relations blitz during the China Central Asia Summit, there was a second EU Central Asia Economic Forum, which championed the region's economic sovereignty and connectivity to global markets. There need to be support for regions' accession into global standards and global organizations, WTO, Generalized System of Preferences for Trades. pulling the region into higher global standards will actually make it more attractive to business. The second area, increased attention and engagement by Western capitals is absolutely vital. We've heard this mentioned already, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine has brought change and opportunities and challenges. I'm excited to actually quote Viktor Orban for something in a speech positively. Orban said, "The current war situation has upset traditional economic relations and is opening up a new era in the world economy. We have to look for new routes and new partners." He said that in Ashgabat on his most recent visit. I think, this is a classic example of how we need to do more engagement, more creative engagement with this region. There are needs for improving power connectivity. These are massive. There's a need for modernization, updating legacy infrastructure. I think clear messaging is critical as well. Some of the Central Asians have raised concern over mixed messages from the West. There's an energy crisis that's triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine that's accelerated renewable energy development in the EU, which is reducing dependence on Russian gas imports. But you have to also have those corresponding signals that renewable energy is of interest, but natural gas as a transition fuel has to also continue to be raised. There's a pace of change that continues to grow rapidly, and we need to accept this. Things that were unimaginable 5 years ago, 3 years ago, are actually possible today. This pace of change, I would note Secretary Blinken from the United States. We have stood together to advance European energy security, particularly during Russia's brutal war against the people of Ukraine. The United States will continue to support a sustainable and just peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Imagine that 3 years ago. Nuclear reactor proliferation, this is a trend which we see is growing. Russia is offering a reactor to Uzbekistan. We're certainly seeing an energy shift and opening a proliferation, the idea of reactor proliferation. The U.S. Senate subcommittee has just approved legislation aimed at speeding up implementation and development of nuclear reactors. Finally, I guess the partnership between Azerbaijan and the countries of Central Asia is exploding. There's no other way to describe it. Cooperation in the area of transportation logistics is a main focus, but the war in Ukraine has absolutely forced the rerouting of cargoes from east to west, and Azerbaijan's role it's valuable for not just for transportation of oil exports and uranium, but petrochemicals, fertilizers, tremendous opportunities for cargo from all of Central Asia across the region. We're seeing a growing era of new cooperation and partnerships. As I was saying before, it's almost like it's a return to 1991, where countries of this region have opened up and are actually looking for new ways to engage with each other without Russia entering into the equation and dominating it. It is a new period for these regions to work together. There are new opportunities at this point in time, and the pace of change just keeps accelerating. And one of the challenges we face in policy is trying to actually keep up with the pace of change. I think what was once unthinkable now is possible, but what we particularly need are the changes that are taking place now to be sustainable and weather the peace that hopefully will be coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for a very insightful speech and covering a lot of issues in a very good context, very complex issues together. I'd like to turn to Dr. Michael Dennison, Senior Advisor for BP. A little bit of snapshot from his bio. Michael Dennison is the head of BP's International Advisory Team based in London. He joined BP in 2013 and has worked on the Caspian region for about 25 years in business academic research and for the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Michael read modern history at Keble College, Oxford, holds an LLM from the City University, London, and PhD in political science from the University of Leeds. And he's also regularly teaches at the Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy Summer School in Baku as well. And Michael, good to have you here. Floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Afghan.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much for the invitation. It's great to be here. Foreign Minister Bayramov went through the facts and figures this morning in a great speech where he really summarised a lot of the achievements that we've seen in Azerbaijan and building the energy connectivity into Europe. I just want to take a minute to sort of celebrate some of those achievements or contextualise those achievements before we look at the challenges that Eric has really outlined so well earlier on. So what we did was we built a new regional energy system over the past 25 years. It can't be understated what that involved. It has been transformational for the energy systems of several countries. We've now got nearly a dozen countries that are connected to the Southern Gas Corridor, or will be, when we add in some of the Central and Eastern European states, which Minister Bayramov talked about earlier today. If you take the investors and the lenders and the supply chain, then you can at least double that, if not more, in terms of the contributors to this corridor. So what you have really is a regional energy system with a global footprint. And the only way we could have achieved that, well, two things really for me stand out. The first is vision and teamwork. This starts with the governments. It starts with the governments of the region. It starts with Azerbaijan, the holder of the resource, ultimately. But it takes political leadership to actually get the states together and to make it happen. So the governments worked really well together. The second component is governments and companies working together. And by companies, I mean not only international energy companies like BP, but also the national companies. And I'm really pleased that Vitaly is here from SOCAR, because we have worked together now for 25 years, and it's been, when you consider you're doing really big projects, big multinational projects, they're so complicated, they're so difficult to put together. And the fact that we're not only together now, but we're looking to work together for the next decades as well, tells us what we need to know about that partnership that has worked well. Companies have to work together as well to deliver these projects. And there are a lot of investors, there are a lot of different stakeholders in ACG and in the Southern Gas Corridor team. And we have to reconcile their different interests and work together, and we've done that as well. So that's one thing. The second is stability of contracts. And the energy game is a risk game at the end of the day. And that means you're always searching for stability, searching for contract stability. And I think one of the standout features of Azerbaijan's development is that we've had that contract stability. That is something that is really the foundation stone for investment, and we've had that. So I think that's what we've done. It's an impressive achievement, and it's actually an achievement which you can't really say has been done anywhere really similarly anywhere else in the world. So we shouldn't be shy of actually celebrating that. But then we have the next steps. And as the Minister said, the EU has came to Azerbaijan and said, we want more gas. We need more gas. The EU has obviously decided, in the wake of the invasion of Ukraine, to move away from over-reliance, some might say, on Russian gas exports. And it's clear that the Caspian is one source of energy connectivity, which the EU wants to grow. So the task really over the next 5 to 7 years is really fulfilling that ambition. President Aliyev has made it clear that he wants to go there. How do we put those pieces together? It's not easy. We have to get the production up. We're doing that at the moment. Vitaly may speak about this in a few moments. We're doing that. We've got impressive gains year on year for Chardonnays, and we're seeing the numbers go up in the first quarter of 2020. So we're adding volumes in, but that's only part of the story. You've got to put the pieces together further down the value chain as well, and that means adding capacity all the way through to Italy. It means another set of intergovernmental agreements. It means getting the contract and the marketing right, the market tests, getting the contract frameworks right, getting the market frameworks right. So that's the task. It's not easy, but we've got the proof of concept there. We've done it. So this is about adding more to it. But it's not all about gas. And as Eric has said, we are impelled to look at beyond hydrocarbons and into renewable energy. And we're starting to do that. Azerbaijan has made a good start putting the legal frameworks in place. The minister talked earlier on about the potential of the country. We're going to join them with it. We're starting by decarbonising the Sangachal terminal with a solar plant. That's the first bit. But we've also got to look more than just production, more than just capacity. One thing I've experienced in the last 2 years of working very heavily on renewable energy is that production capacity is one thing, but you've got to get all the other bits in place as well. And that's the market design, which is far more complex in renewable energy than it is in oil and gas. You have to get things like permitting right. You have to think about the supply chain, and often headline demands to increase renewable capacity ignore the fact that you have to put the supply chain in place, and that will probably mean, in the case of the Caspian local blade manufacturer, it's a great opportunity to build up that supply chain. You've got to get the marketing and the transportation agreements as well. So just saying that you can put more electrons into the market by simply creating them is actually not, it's too simple. You've really got to put everything else, all the other building blocks in place. We're finding it difficult in this country. Anybody who follows the energy scene in the UK will know that one of the challenges is getting the grid upgraded. The EU is facing similar challenges. Azerbaijan and the Caspian states are not alone in this. This is the fundamental universal challenge of moving from one energy system to another. And it will take some time, and it will take a lot of planning, and it will take a lot of work and capital. To do these projects, they have to pay, though. They have to pay. And that's where you get the market design and the market arrangements in place. So there are a lot of challenges ahead of us. I think the region's making a start on shifting its energy system over, but it's clear that under any reputable scenarios for net zero out to 2050, under any that I've seen anyway, there is a place for oil and gas in that scenario. That is not going to go away, and gas is going to be a part of Europe's energy mix in 30 years' time, for sure. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Michael. And I'd like to turn to Dr. Vitaly Baylarbayev, with the SOCAR. And I actually have, again, a snapshot of your bio that I want to introduce you to our audience. Many of us know you already, but I want to give a small paragraph here. Vitaly Baylarbayev, Deputy Vice President of State Oil Company of Azerbaijan Republic for Investments and Marketing. Dr. Vitaly Baylarbayev has over 30 years of experience in the oil and gas industry and holds a PhD in economics. He is a member of the Association of International Petroleum Negotiators and has held executive positions in the negotiations and management of a number of major oil and gas projects, including the Azeri-Chirag Güneşli oil fields, the Shah Deniz project, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, and the Southern Gas Corridor projects, including the expansion of the South Caucasus pipeline and establishment of the Trans-Anatolian pipeline and TAP. Head of he was also head of the Southern Gas Corridor value chain integration team, board member of the Sarmatia crude oil pipeline project and Agri LNG project as well. I hope that was comprehensive enough at this point, and turn to our esteemed speaker.
Thank you very much, Afgan. Thank you all. Just to add that I'm also frequent guest at your Caspian Policy Center initiatives, which I enjoy and very thankful for.
Thank you.
Just to mention that I will try to follow the logic of the previous speakers, but I will try not to repeat what they said, but just to open up some new areas for our debate, if there will be any, and try to stay kind of interest to the auditorium here. It's very well known that from the restoration of our independence in 1994, we benefited significantly from our cooperation with our neighbors, being neighbors in the Caspian Sea region or being neighbors in the Central Asia. And the cooperation of especially Georgia and Turkey, together with the cooperation of the Central Asian state, has grown significantly in the recent years. That includes, obviously, trade connections, that includes transportation, that includes strategic cooperation, that includes all areas, not necessarily and not only in energy sphere, but much beyond it. We are working together with our neighbors and our partners for the growth of the middle corridor, and it's extremely important for us, for SOCAR, because that provides us with additional new opportunities. We are trying to attract the Central Asian states into that endeavor, and to a certain extent, we are successful in that, and we hope for more. We are welcoming the support provided by the Central Asian states to the construction of the Zangezur corridor, and again, we are considering this as important element, not only in the transportation of the general goods, but also in our energy agenda and our efforts in moving our resources to those markets where they might be needed most. Cooperation in sphere of energy especially is growing, and we anticipate its further increase in the near future. By the near future, we mean the period of time when our resources are declared to be in need by the European Union and the countries of the region, i.e. we're talking about perspective up to 2035 and beyond, which has been stated by the European Commission at a number of occasions as a period when our gas and some of our products will still be in high demand. This will include projects where SOCAR participates with the Turkish energy companies and international energy companies in the investment in the Caspian region and investments into the Central Asian states as well. So basically here I'm making the statement that SOCAR and Azerbaijan are interested in further developing and increasing the level of cooperation with the Central Asian states and investing into their economies. And I can make examples here of Uzbekistan, which was so well represented here at the morning session, saying that we are developing jointly projects where both countries will cooperate closely in each of other territories. We also strongly developing our further presence in Turkey, where we are currently already one of the major foreign investors. And we are obviously maintaining strong positions in the transportation as well as petrochemical industry, and we expect to actually expand that cooperation. But that's all started with the participation of the Turkish companies in our upstream sector, which is we are continuously promoting and developing even further now. So we expect more investments into Turkey, we expect more investments from Turkey, and we believe that will be important and beneficial for all. I would like to mention that in the Caspian region, we, together with our partner countries, are in most of the cases more realistic and more strategic in our approach to energy than many other regions. We planned correctly for what we assessed as the future needs of our country. Energy security of Azerbaijan is fully provided and guaranteed by our own production. We also contributing strongly into the energy security of our neighbors and our consuming partners. Accordingly, and this is an example of that, the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline was built with the spare capacity which now might be available for those who may need this capacity. And again, conversation here in the morning was about ability of the Central Asian states to move substantial volumes of their resources, primarily in the case of the BTC, obviously we're talking about crude oil, through the capacity which has been already established, which has clear and transparent rules, and which is available to all of those who would like just to follow those rules in the non-discriminatory manner. We already started transportation of increased volumes of crude from Kazakhstan to the international markets. Again, this was mentioned here. Let's not forget that we were transporting, we continuously transport also crude oil from Turkmenistan in, from year to year, growing quantities. This activity will continue. This activity will require certain further development of the oil terminals on the side of Azerbaijan in order to allow the transportation of increased volumes of millions of tons of potential increase of volumes from the Central Asian states, and we are fully prepared to invest and to develop that. We already did it in order to establish the safe route for the transportation of Kazakhstani crude oil into the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline. We are obviously prepared also to develop whatever is required in order to develop crude from the Central Asian states, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, through the Baku-Supsa pipeline, again, through the Black Sea, across the Black Sea to the international markets, and we are considering this as an important element in developing interconnectivity between us and Central Asian states. We also continue to pursue transit of gas from Kazakhstan and from Turkmenistan through Azerbaijani gas infrastructure. We're already doing that. It was mentioned by you, Eric. We intend to increase it, and we're doing that in order to increase supplies to the European markets, not to support our own gas industry or gas demand, but just to increase ability to transport more gas from Azerbaijan to those who need it most. To the customers, primarily in Europe, who are continuously, since the beginning of our supplies of gas on the 31st of December 2020, to Europe through TAP, who continuously asking for more and more gas to be delivered to the customers, currently in Italy, currently in Greece, currently in Bulgaria, and from 2023 also in Romania. And you are aware that we signed also agreement envisaging the further supplies of our gas, first supplies of our gas to Hungary in 2023. This geography will be expanded. This geography will be extended through also our cooperation with the transportation service providers, including the Solidarity Ring partnership or projects, which we successfully agreed and signed for with our partner countries in Sofia in April of this year. So that's another important extension and expansion of the geography of our operations. Yes, we will continue our supplies through Southern Gas Corridor to already mentioned countries, including to Italy, where Shell Venice Consortium participated already in the first stage of the open season market test announced back in 2021. It's still ongoing. And we, together with our partners, considering the further participation in the further stages of the same market test, as well as in the further open seasons, which will be announced by TAP and followed by the connected with TAP system of pipelines, talking about TANAP, talking about Southern Caucasus pipeline, talking obviously about SNAM system, which also need to react to the volumes which we intend to supply. So that is in our plan for the years to come, for the coming years, and that is an important element of the energy policy of Azerbaijan, which has been formulated and supported in the documentation side, signed including with the European Commission President, Madame von der Leyen, and as well as I mentioned already, with our partners in the Balkan countries, in the Western European countries, and in the Eastern European countries. But here comes another question, which comes about the realism which we witnessing currently in the energy policies of the countries of primarily European Union, but also the others. We consider this as lack of that lack of that realism, especially in the period of the current global, but starting in Europe, back in 2019, 18 even, energy crisis, which is basically worst crisis since Second World War, and the crisis which some believe was successfully overcome, but this is yet to see. But at least the crisis which we very delicately and in the balanced way need to deal with as we are developing our energy policies and planning for the mid and short-term operations. As an example of this not really balanced situation, just stoppage of certain facilities or processing facilities in Norway led immediately to the change in the prices for the gas within the last 10 days. And the growth recorded was about 20%. So this is what it is at the moment. Just some activity on certain front, let's say, of our energy war, and this is war for the resources, this is war for the prosperity, if you wish, a good well-being of the population in the countries we are supplying with the resources, immediately resulted in the spike in the price, which was not expected, because most of the experts were saying that this summer will be very cheap. This summer will be fine. This is warm summer. And ahead of us, there is a warm winter. I'm not good in the meteo forecasts. I cannot predict the winter weather. I just can say that usually the winter and cold weathers are changing for each other, but that's from the experience of my life, which is more than 30 years in business, as you mentioned. So usually things are warm and then they sometimes are cold. And if they are cold, we should be prepared for that. And we are not. That's what I'm saying. Or you are not. Because we in Azerbaijan are in a way prepared, because we are increasing substantially our supplies. But what Europe is doing in the time when gas is required more, what Europe is doing is using more fuel oil and more coal. Almost everywhere. Almost everywhere. In Germany and in the Balkans, where people even are burning wood in order to keep their houses warm. And still we are talking about the need to get rid of gas, the belief that gas is something which is not required. Yes, all experts here are saying that gas is important, this is transition fuel. We all say that. And at the same time, we all silently watching how people are protesting the use of gas, or how the investors are now running out of investing into the gas industry. And the lack of this investment will obviously hit back. Will hit back soon. Not this year, but in the years to come. Because Azerbaijan is probably the only who increased substantially its gas supplies to Europe in the recent years. Who else will be able to do that? I don't know. But let's see how it will be developed. We have a number of fields which were not mentioned here, but very well known, which could come on stream between now and 2027, the period of time when we were aiming to double our gas production. And all of these fields require work, and work requires money. And money is called investment. And investment comes from the financial institutions, as it did in 2013, 14, ending actually in the construction of the Southern Gas Corridor, something which we are not witnessing as we speak. So further into the same, traditionally in the energy businesses, natural gas and renewables were not viewed as competing for the market demand, but as complementary. Now the situation is, as some people say, is changing. Renewable capacity was developed together with the natural gas, and actually it was going hand in hand. Remember that ammonia and the huge quantities cannot be currently produced without gas. Remember that hydrogen is also cannot be that green and safe as some people speak, but most importantly, the market for the hydrogen is not at all developed here in Europe. We still, as natural gas producers, are continue to produce the base load for the renewable energy. And we in Azerbaijan believe that this model is correct, and this model is the best model for the years to come, the best model for the development, further development of our energy infrastructure. Southern Gas Corridor being the Southern Gas Corridor and Solidarity Ring, and the further development into the European peripheries. We believe that renewable capacity will continue to lead to growth in demand for natural gas. That is an important element in what we are developing. But at the same time, due to the lack of sufficient investment in gas production, there could be a shortage of supply, and that is what we all need to try to avoid. Having said that, and it was mentioned here as well, we are investing strongly into the development of solar and wind energy in Azerbaijan, as well as we're planning for export across Georgia and Black Sea of the renewable produced electricity. That's an important element of our policy, and we are doing that at Azerbaijan only, and the first solar and wind plants will be commissioned in 2024. We're doing that together with BP. We're doing that in TAP. In BP, we are electrifying or decarbonizing, if you wish, the Sangachal terminal, and we are planning already to electrify our offshore platforms. This is the first one is project which is already developed. The second is project which we are currently building as project in progress. But we're doing that also in TAP, in Trans-Adriatic Pipeline. Electrification of TAP is an important element of our plans or strategy for the TAP's future. TAP will be increased, but will be increased as electrified gas pipeline. And that is what all of you will be benefiting from. But still, the electrified gas pipeline will be delivering gas. And that needs to be understood and supported by the financial institutions who now are, by law, by the European Parliament regulations, are prohibited from participating in this effort. So we are looking forward to expanding our cooperation with our partners in all spheres, including the spheres of the renewables, including spheres of the production of gas. And I just would like to stress once more that in response to the energy crisis in Europe, we stepped and ready to deliver the increased gas supplies. When the current crisis emerged, we immediately began identifying ways to increase supplies to Europe, including establishing new supplies, new additional supplies to Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and beyond. And we are developing, engaging now in the development of the fields in Azerbaijan, and in line with the MOU I mentioned, but we also are coping with our partners in Central Asia in order to provide them with the ability to safely and securely deliver their gas to the markets which require it that much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Baydarbayev, for a very insightful speech and the SOCAR's investments in, and also plans to increase engagement with Central Asia and also Turkey as well. its important role for the European energy security. I now like to turn to our last speaker, Halil Emecan, partner at the Centricus. Good to have you here. And Halil Emecan has over 25 years of experience in financial markets and investment banking. You know, in previous speeches, we touched the financial institutions and also ability to finance some of the projects in the region as well. He's a specialist in structured finance and investment solutions. He was previously at Goldman Sachs, where he was head of coverage for Turkey and Central Eastern Europe and European Financing Group. Prior to that, Halil was the head of securities for Goldman Sachs Middle East and Africa business based in Dubai. At Goldman Sachs, he was mainly responsible for originating and structuring transactions for global strategic investors. Earlier in his career, Halil also led the global markets business for Turkey and Israel at Deutsche Bank. Halil holds MBA specializing in finance from University of New Haven, USA, and Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Boğaziçi University in Turkey. Please.
Thank you, Efkan. It's good to be here. As I'm the last speaker before lunch, so I'll keep it very brief with a bit of a background on the current financial conditions, especially the credit and investment markets, and the implications on the region. As everyone said here, you know, given the importance of energy security, infrastructure, middle corridor, that requires a substantial amount of funding. I think when we look at the markets after 2008, a very loose monetary policy, quantitative easing, and the amount of government support post-crisis created an environment where there were substantial investments everywhere, mostly in technology. But I think up until we came to 2020, pandemic, and after that, the Russian-Ukraine conflict, world forget to invest in core infrastructure. During the pandemic, what we have seen, everybody invested in these fantastic ideas, technology companies, and billions and zillions of dollars. But quickly we find out we don't have enough ships, enough ports, enough railways, storage, logistics, and today, like in many of my colleagues says, now it's the revenge of the old economy. So where are we today? Post-pandemic, even the more accelerated quantitative easing obviously created the inflationary pressures. And then during the pandemic, plus the Ukrainian conflict, we now have a supply chain issue the world is trying to address, and it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. Combined with the energy security issue, all the raw materials, we now have a near-term equilibrium of higher rates, higher prices, and all these dislocations in the market. So what does it mean for Central Asia? I think as world trying to figure out, you know, the onshoring, friendshoring, energy supply, we are seeing some of the projects I have been looking or working in the region, we are definitely seeing more government involvement. And I think private sector, given the higher interest rates and all the other investment alternatives in developed markets, there is a competition for capital. And given the recent developments, the shift is towards the West, especially in US, especially after the Inflation Reduction Act. So that became a center of attention for many of the investors. So how do we get more capital in the region? So we are seeing from the Gulf a very strong interest, more strategic into the region. Many of the sovereign wealth funds, governments, and the banks looking to invest. In terms of the Western investments, one benefit of that monetary easing, from the banks, we now have substantial pool of capital, what we call non-bank financial system, call it private lenders, private credit funds, and they're all looking for returns now. So when we talk to these investors, I think there are few themes ESG is becoming a main parameter for the investors. It was a lot of talk, but now for any Western investors we have seen, ESG is definitely a criteria. But once you tick that box, and I think the return requirements will be the second, and again, the government involvement, public-private partnerships, multilateral development agencies has a very important role to play. And once that is done, I think it will be easier to invest and finance these projects. And I think here you have both BP and SOCAR. As Michael said, it took 25 years to create that ecosystem, but I had the chance to finance part of that. Once you have two aligned parties with the right regulatory framework and the government support, then it will make much easier for private investors to come, take that. But it is a challenge. It is call it a perfect storm for the investors, and with the higher interest rates, reduce risk appetite, and combine that with potential road accidents, which we have seen this year. Luckily it didn't cause much problem, but the collapse of SVB banks. But there will be more accidents along the way. And I think, as I said, both government, investors, and agencies has a very important role to play to basically bring more capital to the region. So I'll stop here and then leave time for the Q&A.
Thank you so much. I know we are kind of over time, but I can accept maybe 1-2 questions if anyone willing to ask. Here, please.
Global. This question for Dr. Baybarliev. Sorry.
Baybarliev, yeah.
Azerbaijan and SOCAR has a clear interest in maintaining the very specific quality of the BTC crude oil, the Azeri light crude oil, which trades at a significant premium to Brent prices. Are there limits to how much crude oil from third countries you can accept into that crude stream without, for want of a better word, adulterating the value of that crude oil? And are there ways to overcome that, perhaps through infrastructure construction, or manage, more spending investments in how you're actually going to manage that crude oil, perhaps in the terminals or anything like that? Could you just expand on that topic, please?
Thank you. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, there are limits, and those limits also follow the requirements of the documentation prepared for the agreed and in place for the BTC, including the BTC's quality banking. We are doing everything, and everything is, if you wish, changing. Nobody can maintain the same level of the quality of crude supplied as well as quality of crude delivered to the final customers. But we're trying to keep the optimal balance, which at the moment is established at the level which I named as the level of crude oil going through the BTC as we speak. So 1.5 million tons of additional crude oil which is coming to BTC does not change its quality parameters to the extent which will negatively affect the quality of so-called Azeri light, which is coming out of it in Ceyhan. But that can change in the future, and that all depends on how the crude oil coming into the pipeline is processed before that. So if we're talking about the Mercaptani crude, or crude with a high content of sulfur, it just needs to be prepared properly in order to be able to be transported through the pipeline. Or that such oil needs to be prepared to pay for the transportation, what will be defined in the course of the technical experts conversation as this fair and transparent compensation for the quality which will be lost because of its transportation in the not properly prepared, let's say, form.
Thank you so much. One more question over there.
Hi, yes, this is Dave Skeels with the British Kazakh Society. I have one brief comment and one simple question. The comment is just to compliment the organisers today. It's been a brilliant morning with a great panel. The simple question is gas from Central Asia, from Kazakhstan, and of course from Turkmenistan, which the latter has been discussed for perhaps 20 years. Can you qualify that a little more? And is the time right now? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone wants to challenge that question?
I'll chime in. I think the time is definitely right. Europe needs gas. Europe wants a transition fuel. I think the Azeris have more than demonstrated a willingness in working with Turkmenistan. What's, I think, also particularly interesting is you have Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan also as potential gas suppliers who are sort of interested in I guess one could say, and I say this recognizing that the cold winter this past year has challenged their ability to meet their own demands, but they're also actually interested in reaching across as well. You know, I think in a perfect world where you could get an interconnector pipeline even, there's existing pipelines that would enable Uzbek and Kazakh gas to even transit an interconnector across to Azerbaijan and onward, which would basically create 3 Central Asian supply countries. The likelihood of all of that happening obviously depends upon the willingness of Ashgabat to engage. I think signals have been sent from Brussels. I think certainly signals from Black Sea countries of the need for this fuel are very strong. You know, is this the right moment? I can only hope so. Again, as I said earlier, I would hate to see the region miss the opportunity, miss this window, and they need to act on it soon. I mean, it doesn't take that long to do an interconnector. A larger pipeline obviously takes a bit longer, but the swap capabilities through Iran are pretty much maximized at this point. There's only so many BCM that they can move through that line. So the only other way is actually across the Caspian itself.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to chime in on this? Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for sticking with us today. And I know lunch is waiting for us, but let's get a round of applause to our panelists here. Thanks, everyone.